Okay, we're on.
Wait, this is my coffee.
Sorry, Dad. I didn't know what you were talking about.
Unbelievable. I came in, I put the, I get two. I
just looked at them, I'm like, do I get 2 coffees?
no, I lost my mind. I went down to coffee break before they closed because I usually have an afternoon coffee.
Yeah.
We're streaming, so we're not on the...
Oh, we're streaming?
Yes.
Okay, well, apologies. Good evening, it's 7:01, July 24th, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting. First order of business on our agenda tonight is review and approval of minutes.
There are a couple suggested changes that I put on everybody's.
Did I just give that back to you? I did.
I'm fine with these changes.
I am too. I'm fine with those.
I am as well, so I'll move that we approve the meeting minutes from July 5th, 2017 as written.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's confirm future meeting dates. The board will meet again on August 14th and August 28th. September dates would be the 4th and 18th, however, the 4th is Labor Day. So why don't we all circle through Michael and figure out what is best for that day, as there's a lot
That
going
week?
on for people, yeah, for that week rather, yeah.
Okay.
With that, Mr. Chairman, can I just mention to you, the September 18th, the Master Plan Implementation Committee would like to invite this board and the Planning Board to a joint meeting to meet with the MAPC about the wharf in the Milton Village project.
That's what I did.
Good, yeah, look forward to that. That's
Will we
great.
do it here? We'll do it here in Town Hall?
Town Hall, yes.
Okay.
Probably
Probably
down
the
in
Blue Room because
right?
of the number of people, yeah.
Okay, that's great. No, thank you. Look forward to that. Okay, item 4 on our agenda is citizen speak. Do we have anybody here tonight to address the board? Come on up, and if we could have you sign in, that would be great.
No? Yeah? No?
If you just want to state your name. Sure.
Take a seat. You can, are you both
Yeah,
on the same
you guys
issue?
can both
Yes.
sit
Together? Oh, you
down.
sit right there.
Yeah.
So name and address, please.
Kevin White, 469.
Hey, Ken, how are you?
Pleasant.
Present. Okay.
Yeah, Pleasant Street.
Greg Dunn, and 14 Gordon Road.
Kevin, Greg, welcome.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Floor is ours. This is fantastic. I thought we were going to have to sit through the meeting and...
You get to go first.
Yes, so thank you. Appreciate this opportunity. I had spoken previously to David and to Michael about an ongoing issue that we've had in our neighborhood, and like to acknowledge that it's, I think, an issue throughout the town of Milton regarding traffic and increased speeding, reckless driving, just in general. We've had a lot of issues in our neighborhood, and it's been something that for at least a few years now, at least, we've talked amongst the neighborhood about issues that we've had. And again, I apologize, I haven't prepared a number of notes from the neighbors, but we wanted to bring some ideas to the table for consideration that we've discussed, and I'm happy to say that certainly the response that I've received from both David and Mike and from the police department as well has been very cooperative, very open to listening to the issues that we have going on. But we feel that it's under-resourced right now in terms of being able to police this particular neighborhood. And I'll kind of cut to the chase here. So the area that we're talking about is on Pleasant Street, the connector between basically Brook and Edge Hill, okay? So it has become, and it's always been, obviously, one of the few roads that you can get from, that side of the neighborhood down to Brook Road. It coincidentally happens to be the main thoroughfare for the elementary schools, or one of the main thoroughfares for Cunningham and Collycott. And what we've noticed has been, particularly at the rush hour times, okay, when the kids are walking to school in the mornings, and/or coming home in the afternoon, but for that matter, might not have to be coming or going from school, but they're outside playing afterwards, okay? So they get home from school at 3 o'clock, and of course, everybody's running around, and then the traffic usually hits about 4 o'clock till about 6:30. You know, obviously, the peak times is when it really picks up. And so the main issue that we've had has been just in general, you know, and there's a lot of folks that come through the neighborhood very respectfully. I don't want to say that it's complete, you know, Thunderdome there, to be honest. But there are also a significant amount of folks who don't respect the fact that it's a heavily residential with over, and I just did a quick kind of count of the number of kids that are in elementary school in that neighborhood. There's at least 50, and that's just the people that I know, never mind the families that have younger kids that I haven't met yet. So just, you know, talking about Peter Mullen or Kevin, his family, or the folks on Hoyt Terrace, I mean, we've got at least 50 elementary school age kids who frequently, as kids do, go back and forth to their friend's house, and they constantly are crossing that Pleasant Street. And, you know, we've tried, frankly, to self-police it, and that's not going to end well for anybody, because people don't listen to you, and when you scream at them to slow down, you get, you know, you get flipped off, you get all sorts of, they speed up. I mean, anything, and we try to put the slow Joes, as they call them out there, to remind people it's a neighborhood, ignored. And again, and so our, let me pass it to Kevin here, because before I get to the solutions, I think the main issues, again, are the group of folks that come through there and either ignore the stop signs and use it as almost like a quarter-mile, see how fast I can go from here to there. I swear it's almost like a challenge for a couple of these folks, because it's not like they're going 25 miles an hour. I mean, we get people that are going a legit 45, 50 miles an hour up that hill, easily. And again, I haven't radar gunned it, but I can promise you, based on the engine, and I can hear the engine roar. I'm on Gordon Road. I hear the engines roar, and I look between the two houses, and I see the car go flying. I'm saying to myself, oh my God. And that's when I text Lindsay Peterson and say, Lindsay, see if you can get some video of this so that we can, you know, and have some proof. Because the police have been extremely cooperative. Again, I can't credit them enough, but they can't be there all the time. Okay? So, Kevin, if you...
So, I've lived at 469 Pleasant Street for almost 15 years now, and we're very much committed, my wife and I, to the community and volunteer and coach little leagues and all kinds of stuff. But I'm taking a little stronger stand. I am here tonight because someone's going to get killed, and it cannot be on my conscience. We have tried for years to approach the police station, and they listen, and there's a smile, but nothing has been done. Police have shown up occasionally on the street. I have invited them to back into my driveway. They do so, and I'll be chatting, and someone goes tearing through the stop sign.
So just one question, which stop sign are we referring to? We're talking about Windermere?
There's like a
It's in Pleasant?
4 or 5-way intersection right where Gordon hits Pleasant.
Okay.
So that's at the lower part of the street. Nothing was done. He did not say, excuse me, and go after this person. It is just kind of wink, wink, yep, this isn't good. And I'm a general contractor, a business owner in town. I am more than happy to put in and take out speed bumps as the seasons are needed. I know that Mr. Dunn would be on board with this. I know Mrs. Peterson, and we're the ones that have the kids right in this area that it's predominantly affecting. I cannot leave here tonight with my conscience knowing that someone's going to get killed. It's on you guys now. We need your help. And I know that sounds dramatic, but if you have a little child and you're walking to school up the street and you go around that corner right where, help me with the name, the terrace, Hoyt Terrace, we refer to that as Dead Man's Corner, because people fly through there. There's kids trying to cross the road right there. It is beyond a nightmare. And I really welcome, on the first day of school, you to come and witness, because you would not be happy. So as a concerned parent, I will do anything. If you say, hey, do this, I'll do it. But it's really scary.
And so one last point, Richard, before I know you were going to say, so when Kevin says we're committed, we're willing to pay for the speed bumps, entirely out of our pockets from the neighborhood. We don't care about the cost.
Put in, take out.
We don't care. We'll put in, take it out. We need to have your blessing as to be able to put them down, and the cooperation as to when they would go in and when they would come out, so as not to interfere with the snow removal. So that's what he
kinda
was, when he said we're willing to
Quick
put our money
fix.
where our mouth is.
So obviously, that's a quick fix, but if you determine, hey, no, really, something needs to happen, obviously, we'd prefer to have permanent speed bumps in.
Sure.
But if, I'm at the point, I'm going to draft a letter and go door to door and have every single person sign it.
You don't
If-
need to do that.
Okay.
You don't need to do that.
And I was hoping to hear that, because it's going to take a lot of time for me to do that.
Yeah, so we normally, just policies, we normally respond at the end of our meeting in citizen speak, but I think that, rather than keeping you here all night, maybe we could have a quick 2-minute discussion. I think that there's a lot of moving parts in this. I
Yeah,
think that
and we
obviously,
respect that.
and I think that, we have a traffic commission that, I think that Michael, as our town administrator, should take the lead and have a discussion with the police chief, have a discussion with our traffic commission, and take a look at this. Now, you're not the only ones in town. We realize this. I have little kids myself, and I live on a street that's a cut-through street, and
Yep.
I have the same fears that when our kids, and we have 30, 40 kids in our neighborhood, are going to ride their bike out of a driveway, and God forbid somebody is cutting through from Brook Road to get to Central Ave going 35 miles an hour or whatever they're going. The good news is we passed a bylaw last year at annual town meeting for a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that can be enforced in thickly congested areas. It's very possible that your neighborhood could be targeted as one of those for better enforcement, but I'll leave that up. I'm not the chief of police, and I trust the chief of police and the former chief of police who sits on our board for their opinion, because they know a lot more than we do about this stuff, and I think collectively we can come up with a solution, because nobody wants anything about what you're talking about anywhere in town. And I think that, so we have to think about certain measures, and if we, and I just say this out loud, not to say that it can't happen, but if we put speed bumps in one place, do we have to put them in every place? I don't know, but the point is that I think this can be vetted in a professional way, and I think that we can come up with a solution, and unfortunately, you're here tonight to talk about something that's really negative, but hopefully we can find a positive.
Totally. I think we're in a particularly difficult spot, because if you are commuting to work and trying to get onto 93 and you're coming off of 24 where Tedeschi's is and you're heading down Pleasant Street just before you get to the schools, it becomes total gridlock when the kids are coming
Right.
and going.
At the
And
school.
we,
Right.
Exactly.
we are the last street you can turn, actually, one of the only streets you can turn left
To avoid the
to avoid
school.
it. So it becomes complete mania.
Where you have an enormous amount of kids. I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question just for clarification? You said you had a couple of ideas, and you mentioned speed bumps. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring to our attention, or was it just the speed bumps?
I would love a camera, so when it hits that 30 mile or 35 or 50 mile an hour, a picture's going to be taken. Because I understand we only have so many resources, and maybe that's even unrealistic. But there is so many people doing it, and I have yelled at so many people and feel badly about it because I don't have a gun, like a radar gun. I don't want to create problems. But I'm not.
I'm laughing because
I know. That was funny.
but yeah, it lightened up the moment. We do have, Michael, explain about the new speed system.
Sure, so we actually solicited 3 bids on Friday. The Department of Public Works, Chase Berkeley, who's the new director, who's behind you. We will be installing 5 radar speed monitors. I don't know if you've seen them. Most recently, they're on Truman Highway. They go into the ground like a street sign will. It tells you the speed limit, and it flashes your speed when you're speeding. They work very well, right? They're not the
Okay.
absolute deterrent.
Sure.
We will move them around the town as the chief of police and the traffic commission see fit.
Sure.
It's just another cost-effective way to
Absolutely.
calm traffic.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you. It's that last left, and everybody sees what's going on at the school and the
Yeah.
congestion.
You want
There
to
is
get out of it.
there is a project underway now. You probably saw Capone out there today doing some preliminary work.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to work on the safety of the school area on Edge Hill, which in fact should alleviate some of the people taking that left
Yeah.
onto Pleasant.
Yeah, I mean, you asked for other suggestions, maybe no left-hand turn between hours of so-and-so. They kind of do that the opposite down there. St. Agatha's coming off of the highway, all those streets have been closed to turning. That might help too. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know if, that one's been discussed before.
Okay.
I think it's just because it's such a major road that it's a, I will say this to you, permanent speed bumps, just because the winters pound them out so bad here.
Sure.
But the idea of a seasonal speed bump is one I would suggest you put in writing and send it to the police station, attention traffic commission.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, maybe we could get the chief to put the signboard down there in some sort of selective
The VMS
patrols.
board, yeah.
Yeah, because that does have, that has a counter in it.
We were told no speed bumps on a road that has a double line.
There's been no speed bumps, I think, even before I was chief 10 years. There's been no speed bumps in over 15 years in this town. But you don't get the bang for your, but seasonal one, that's a possibility. That could happen.
I think it's awfully apparent that there's a serious issue there, and I think that this board recognizes that, and we want to help find a solution and work with you. So I think that we appreciate that you came in, you gave us the nuts and bolts of what's happening, and I think now we're going to go and look to put a plan in place and take the right measures to appropriately find some sort of a solution, okay, and work with you
Thank
guys.
you so
Yeah.
much.
No, thank you for
Appreciate
coming
it.
in here.
And one last question, I know and thank you guys, I know you're allowing extra time. Should we prepare, as you said, Richard,
Yes.
in writing,
Yeah.
kind of some of our ideas?
I'll put a letter and send it. Just to
now,
get
send them to Mr. Denny?
Send them to me and the traffic commission.
Okay, yeah, or the traffic commission, either one. Send it to both of them.
Traffic
Yeah.
Commission
Yeah.
and Michael?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Great.
I do think, and somehow I remember this because we added, isn't there a crosswalk right there at Hoy Terrace, Gordon?
There's
So
two,
we added
Richard.
that, and we put some.
Scary.
Two of
We
them.
put only because you had none, and if I'm correct, there's only sidewalk on one side of the street, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a problem too,
It is.
but
But there's just no more room to take, as we looked at that option.
It's
Right
it's
across from-
tight, it's a
from,
tight, yeah.
Paul, plumbing inspector. Right across from his, that whole stretch of Pleasant from Edge Hill to Hoy has no sidewalk on that side of the road. Paul
On the
Kelly's
Hoy side,
Across,
yeah.
yeah, on the Hoy side.
Across from McKinnon.
Yes. But you had no crosswalk at all. We did add that
Yeah.
crosswalk there, so the kids could at least have a crosswalk.
Correct.
To cross the street.
One last suggestion, we had asked is, and I don't know if they were ever out there, but somebody had suggested they had one of the barrels,
They
the
were.
state law.
They were.
Okay.
Just put that in there as well.
Put it in as well.
They get
Okay,
stolen, they're
sure.
300 apiece, but put it in
Sure,
there.
yep,
Okay.
we'll do.
With the proximity to the school and
Yep.
and the numbers, as you've stated, I
Yep.
think this deserves and warrants immediate attention. So let's move forward on
Okay,
this. and
we appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Thank you for coming
Thank
in.
you.
Yeah.
Gentlemen and ladies, thank you.
Nice to meet you.
We'll be in touch.
You too.
Take care.
Do we have anybody else here for citizen speak? Seeing that we don't, we're going to move on to agenda number 5, which is approval of the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority bond.
And I'm going to be recused on this item. So I'll leave it to you to Richard to
Okay,
read
so
this
I'll
long
read it?
one.
All right. So, the proposed motion to be voted, you can tell me if I go wrong here, Emily, is that the sale of $228,500 at sewer bond of the town dated August 14, 2017, to the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority, herein referred to as the authority, is hereby approved, and the town treasurer or other appropriate town officials authorized to execute on behalf of the town a loan agreement and a financial assistance agreement with the authority with respect to the bond. The bond shall be payable without interest on August 15th, of the years and in the principal amounts as follows. 2018, $22,850, 2019, $22,850, 2020, $22,850, 2021, $22,850, and to include the same amount in the years 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, and 2027, $22,850 to be paid in each year. And it's further voted that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and are hereby authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing vote.
And I'll second that long motion. Any discussion?
No.
Okay, seeing that there isn't, all in favor?
Aye. I'm done.
That was fast.
Read it as fast as I could.
Welcome back. Okay. Item number 6 on our agenda is a quarterly report with our new DPW Director, Chase Berkeley. Welcome, Chase.
Thank you, everybody.
Good evening.
So Chase will introduce himself and provide the board with an update on the department's work. He's only been here for just a short period of time, but this is our first opportunity to welcome you to the town of Milton here formally, and thank you for taking a chance on us. You come with great stock from Boston Water and Sewer, and we know that you're a leader in your capacity and one that's going to help build morale and continue all the good things going with the department that they've been doing for many, many years.
Great, and thank you all for your support in selecting me. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here. And let me just say, everyone here at the town has been very welcoming and very gone above and beyond to make me feel welcome, and have been received very well in all departments. So I just want to pass my appreciation on to you as well for that. So as here on my third week, I'm still absorbing everything in the town, learning a town government process, which is very different, obviously, than a city, but I take a great interest in it, and I'm actually enjoying that part of the job. My focus in the city of Boston was water and sewer. Being a city of that size, wasn't able to get the broad experience that I can already see I'm going to get here. So I'm really looking forward to learning those things that I haven't been able to work on in a full capacity, and welcome that opportunity. On my third week in here, I've had the opportunity to meet with our Shade Tree Committee, something I've never had any exposure to. I've gotten involved with street lighting, traffic signals, roadway transportation. I do have some limited experience with as a co-op at a consulting firm, so not a total stranger, but again, until you take the reins, you don't really truly appreciate that line of work or what the people that are behind the scenes do to keep everything running for our town. So, again, looking forward to those opportunities. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer anything at this time or later.
Chase, coming into a job like this, obviously a much smaller capacity than when you were in prior, and looking at some of our needs, I know you'll be collecting doing an assessment. One of the good things that we're doing is street lights, where we're retrofitting the LED component. We're trying to be as efficient as possible. What are some of the things that, I know it's been a limited period of time, but you and your staff are kind of looking at in terms of building better constituent services? I think that's one of the things that we know you brought in the city of Boston at Boston Water. So where do you see that? Some of the things that you've observed so far.
So I'd agree. There's a place, there's always room for improvement, no matter how good any position we're in. Utilizing the technology that's available today to be able to receive constituent requests for town services, and then being able to respond and then provide accountability in those responses so that nothing goes overlooked or is lost in the shuffle. And I can already see that you've got a platform on your website where anyone can come in and report a problem, and it's front and center, and it's tied into work order management system. So that's a huge step to be able to bring those requests into your system that's also tracking the work that gets performed. So I commend you on having that already in place. It makes my job easier, certainly. Now the focus will be to move the staff into fully utilizing that system, and hopefully move the residents of the town too to see this opportunity to be able to easily submit requests and then get those responses back as timely as possible.
Yeah, well, I think this board can help promote that townwide. I think we have the ability here through social media to get people into the habit, a good habit of utilizing that system, because I think that in the long run, that'll make us more efficient.
Exactly.
And effective.
Yep. And then just another general strategy, my approach coming in, I look at town services and regulatory requirements as equally important. If either one of them fail, we all fail. So we have to provide the services to the people that put us in our place, and we have to meet and comply with the regulating authorities. So my approach will be to treat those as equally important moving forward, which it already appears that you guys have made strides in doing that. So I'd like to continue on that front.
That's great. Anybody?
Chase, for the people who are watching, could you just give a little more about your background, where you went to school, what you've studied, and what you did at the Boston Water and Sewer
Absolutely.
Commission?
So I'm a born City of Boston resident, and I attended Northeastern University, Boston College High School. I have a bachelor's in civil engineering, and I'm also a registered professional engineer with the Commonwealth. For 12 years, immediately after school, I worked for the Boston Water and Sewer Commission. The majority of that capacity was in emergency response, which constituent services is obviously a part of, responding to the water, sewer, and drainage systems in the city on an emergency basis, and then also in our operational capacity of the daily maintenance of those three systems, which, as you can imagine, is a fairly large effort and enough to fill a full-time job in a city of that size. So that experience has brought me through many different types of scenarios that only a big city could, things like the Boston Marathon and national associations, and been able to touch base with people across the country and share ideas that the benefit of being in a city brings you together with compatriot cities. So very fortunate for my time there. I take all those experiences and bring them to the people of Milton for sure. I think that's one of the things we can mutually share in is being able to learn from all those lessons and then continue on and bring that experience to what is obviously a different but in very many ways the same type of service.
That's great, thank you. And I know with your background, especially with the Water and Sewer Commission, you're going to have a lot to help us with on the water and sewer rates that are coming up next month and the stormwater fee. But just one commentary, something maybe for you to keep in mind as you go through the next few months. You talked a lot about Boston, and some of the projects that we consider big are very small by Boston standards, like the water tank project or the road work that's being done in some sections of town, or a big development project where we need the town engineer and the DPW director to be very involved. So for us, those are the big projects, but there's also some low-hanging fruit that in the past we'd really like Public Works to spend a little more time on that they haven't been able to in the past. And it's simple things. It's things like painting the hydrants, and I know we've got kids during the summer who do it, but we never get to enough of them. And painting the traffic light poles. I just driving through the weekend through different parts of town, you look at the intersection of Brook and Adams right in front of St. Agatha's Church, the poles really need to be painted. Same thing at the Pierce Middle School. And then just striping of some of the crosswalks in the streets, or removing graffiti from different public, whether it's hydrants or other utility structures in town. So that's the sort of thing that if you could keep that in mind as you go through the next few months. Obviously, stormwater and water and sewer fees and a lot of other things are a bigger priority for you now, and you're just getting to meet a lot of people and get to know the town. But as you go through the next year, maybe keep that in mind, that wherever we can get some of the low-hanging fruit addressed, that just adds to quality of life for people, and it's the sort of things we get complaints about from time to time. And I think with the background you have, and working with Mike Dennehy, who's got a great background in Public Works, I think the two of you together could make sure that we're targeting some of that low-hanging fruit and getting some of it addressed, like I said, to improve quality of life in the town, make the town look better.
Yeah, and I would completely agree, and, those are the visible parts of what we call buried assets, and that's what everybody sees, and it reflects on your system and on your town in a very positive or negative way, so I take that very well.
Thank you. Good.
That's great.
I think the good thing about that is, as you both know, coming from the city, those little quality of life things are very big there. And I'm confident, but I am also very happy. I don't think people really understand how important our drinking water is. And I've said this to you, Michael, that coming with that type of background, we hear the term MWRA, we hear that a lot of times people forget that it wasn't that long ago they said our harbor was dead. We had the worst we had the worst water system in the country, and you look at places like out in Flint, Michigan, which they may never even be able to correct it. So I think that it's just one more component, it's a different component that I think you'll add here, and I think this will be very good. And I want you to know, and on behalf of all of us, and Michael knows this, we're here to try and help you. We really are. We're committed to try and help you. We understand the leap you've taken to do this, and we are here to help you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it. Chase, thanks so much for coming in tonight and saying hello to us, and we look forward to staying in touch with you regularly. And
Alrighty.
Any challenges, like anything big you need to get it out tonight?
right,
I get one free pass
you
tonight?
get the honeymoon right now.
You need like 50 gallons of paint?
How many zeros can I put?
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
again.
No, I will add, Chase has been very well received by the department heads. We had a department head meeting today. We briefly introduced him. He's met most of the staff in the town. A lot of public works people have come up to me and talked about the morale issues and really starting to put things together. He did walk in the door with a lot of projects coming. We sat with Woodard and Curran last week to go over the rates, setting the rates for water and sewer, coming soon to this board. The streetlights, that's been expedited. I think Chase told me today that we should receive them just before Labor Day. We're putting an RFP out for that, and there's some other stuff I can talk about later in our town administrator report, which directly talk to that quality of life stuff that you had mentioned.
And also, as you mentioned, a leap of faith, because he was very highly regarded, and to leave the Boston Water and Sewer in the position he was in to come to the town of Milton with credit, because there were so many qualified people that applied for this job, and
Very much so.
we were very fortunate to get him. He's got his work cut out for him, because we can always do better, and we've got a lot of good things that can happen. So I think it's a win-win for all of us.
I agree.
So we're going to move on now to a conference with former selectman Rick Neely, who is chair of the Town Government Study Committee, related to Chapter 13 article. Rick is proposing an article for the October 2017 town meeting regarding this Chapter 13 bylaw.
Thank
Good
you, Mr.
evening,
Chairman.
Rick.
Good evening.
Boy, this is
Good evening,
different.
Rick.
Yeah, this is different from me, I'm telling you right now. I'm like,
That was a few years ago, it was the other
oh,
way.
yeah. A long time.
Well, thank you for having me in. On behalf of the Town Government Study Committee, we've been working on an article for the last 18 months, and let me just give you a little history of that. And first of all, the purpose here is to seek your support to be a co-sponsor of this article, which is to revise Chapter 13. And the history of Chapter 13 is that it goes back some 60-plus years, and it really needs to be updated and modernized. So really, it was first addressed recently in September 2013 by the Department of Revenue in its study, so you can look in there, and I can brought it with me tonight. It's like a Bible for our committee, and I can reference a section on the need to change the duties of the Personnel Board and to modernize the structure as you now have an Assistant Town Administrator, which helps in those activities. So in any case, about 19 months ago, the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen at that time, Tom Hurley, and the Town Administrator, Anne Marie Fagan, came to one of our meetings and sat down with us and went through a series of ideas on various topics. And one of the topics they brought to our attention was the need to take a look at Chapter 13. And that was consistent, again, with the Department of Revenue recommendation. So as a result of that, we had a working group of members of the committee that over the past 19 months have researched other towns across the state as to what those towns are doing, and looked at what makes sense and what needs to be updated and modernized in the Milton bylaw If you look at this bylaw, for example, it doesn't reference any of the collective bargaining that has occurred over the last 40 years or so. So it doesn't reflect any consideration of that, and the fact that many of the employees that were originally covered under Chapter 13 became employees under the, they're still employees under Chapter 13, but their compensation and disciplinary structure is covered in their collective bargaining agreements. Another aspect is that the Chapter 13 doesn't really take into consideration, for example, affirmative action or diversity. It doesn't take into consideration the establishment of the goals, and we're not asking the Personnel Board do that, but they certainly can contribute to what the best practices are, what the types of things we should be doing with that, and frankly, monitoring compliance. That's an area where it makes sense for the Personnel Board to say, hey, where should we be, and are we doing well or not doing well? So the revision that we're doing with Chapter 13 would take that into consideration. So I did send out to the board a summary article, summary page as well as an article, the background on that. And what's been going on is that I've also been talking with town council and having town council review it, and he and I had a conversation again this afternoon. And I will, at the end of the week, he's going to send an updated version. I will circulate that to the board and to Mike, and circulate it to Bob Hiss, who is the town moderator, along with the Personnel Board, which is previously, we've met with the Personnel Board, we've shared previous versions with them, but we'll share this other version with them, and we also will share with the other elected boards. Because one of the areas that's in this bylaw change would be the change where the town administrator would take over some of the duties that we intended under the Town Administrator Act. So the Town Administrator Act is very clear that the town administrator appoints the department heads. It was gray on the appointment of other positions. And one of the improvements we think that could take place is that rather than having the employees who are being, potential employees who are being appointed, wait 2, 3, 4 weeks to go through that approval process, the town administrator, under the proposed change, would have that authority.
Yeah, Rick, myself and Mike Dennehy had the privilege to meet with the Town Government Study Committee a couple weeks ago related to this and discuss some of the improvements that could be made. In many of the towns that have gone to the strong form of government have done just that, what Rick said, and given the ability to the town administrator to expedite the hires, even for not just department heads, but for other people, go through the process and have he or she make the final say. And I think that that lends a lot of credibility and also consistency, I think, with the process.
What was the intent when we wrote
Correct.
Town Administrator language, that legislation, that this would be addressed after it became effective?
So maybe if you can bear with me, I can just outline some of the continued duties and changes, because as I said, we've met with the Personnel Board. They've had some concerns about giving up that role in terms of the appointment. And obviously, we've taken their input into some of these changes, but we still have kept the town administrator making the appointments and also taking care of the step raises, for example. So some of the continued duties for the Personnel Board under this Chapter 13 would be upon the recommendation of the appointing authority, which means, for example, the Cemetery Board, Board of Health, Library Board, or in this case, the Board of Selectmen, approve the creation of new employee positions. So the Personnel Board would continue to approve those new position requests and advise the Warrant Committee. So you would still, the Personnel Board would have a key role there. The Personnel Board would continue to maintain the employee classification plan for the town, and the Personnel Board would continue to maintain and recommend to town meeting pay adjustments for the Chapter 13 employees who are not department heads. So if you go through the list, and Paige was kind enough to send back a while ago a list of the positions that are not in collective bargaining. Obviously, it's the Assistant Town Administrator, Paige, the Executive Secretary of the Board of Selectmen, the Licensing Agent to the Board of Selectmen, the Director of Public Works historically. I'm not sure what the new arrangement is.
Correct.
Police, Traffic Supervisor, Police Cadets, the Council on Aging, Van Driver, and Seasonal Employees. So you can see it's a very limited pool of folks that are not covered by collective bargaining. So the added duties for the Personnel Board would be to review job classifications and job descriptions and salary schedules. Also to advise the town administrator during the collective bargaining process, and that's planning process. So the key thing would be during the planning process to advise in terms of what, for example, what's going on in the world. And that's where an advisory role is key, and that's sort of a new role for the Personnel Board, where there's no reference currently to collective bargaining. Promoting and overseeing the town's compliance with affirmative action and EEO guidelines and goals for all departments. Monitoring and reporting to town meeting on the fair treatment of all applicants and employees. Request information from the town administrator on new hires and promotions. And the Personnel Board may review, advise, and report to the town administrator or other appointing authority on the new hires and promotions. That would be in place of them actually going through and approving new hires. And that's, again, may, it's not, it's permissive. Also, to report in writing to the town meeting on the classification and salary schedules and the efforts of town departments to comply with the goals and policies of the bylaw. Some of the change duties would be that the responsibility for maintaining employee records would be shifted from the Personnel Board to the town administrator. And that's actually the practical case today. I mean, the Personnel Board was not able and didn't make sense for the Personnel Board to maintain the employee records. Responsibility for the approval of step raises shifted from the Personnel Board to the town administrator. Responsibility for the approval of waivers of the one-year residency rule would be shifted. This one's a little complicated. It would be shifted from the Personnel Board to the town administrator in the case of all the other appointing authorities. In the case of positions underneath the town administrator, it would go to the Board of Selectmen. So if you're going to waive the residency rule, for example, for a position, it would have to go to, I guess the DPW director would have been a good example. You'd still would go to the Board of Selectmen for approval of that, or you would go there instead of, as it is currently in the Personnel Board. Responsibility for approving that appointed persons meet the minimum requirements of the position and that the appointment has met the requirements of other Personnel Board rules. That's the key one that's being shifted from the Personnel Board to the town administrator. We did, there was work schedules, the rules that we went through when we looked at that in town meeting, we approved an article this year. We think the paragraph that relates to the hours of the town hall really shouldn't be part of the bylaw.
Right.
I mean, you should have the flexibility to look at the hours without having that locked into a bylaw.
So you're proposing to take that out? I thought it was still in here.
Well, in the version we're going to send you, the version, the
It'll
most
be out of the
recent
next
version, it's going to
version.
would be excluded.
It only makes sense in today's day and age. It just makes
We
sense.
talked about this a couple of Monday nights ago.
The grievance procedure would be reclassified as a dispute resolution process. I mean, the grievance procedure created 60 years ago was, there are grievance procedures in the collective bargaining agreements.
Right.
But in this case here, certainly the Personnel Board suggested to us that it would be better called a dispute resolution process, and we think that was a good suggestion. So I'm just trying to think if there's any other key changes that we are looking, and this one is, I haven't had a chance to discuss with the Personnel Board because I just got Town Council's opinion 3 hours ago. And that is, there is a phrase in the existing bylaw, which none of us have ever talked about until now, which is that the Personnel Board had the authority to abolish positions. And the concern of our committee, meeting in the last 2 weeks, was that, what does that mean? And according to the Town Council, just in the last couple of hours, that theoretically applies to positions that are Chapter 13 positions, not collective bargaining positions. But our concern, our committee's discussion, which we have not voted on yet, is that we don't think, for example, that positions that are occupied should be abolished. So our committee next Tuesday night will be discussing eliminating the word abolish. Certainly it makes sense for the Personnel Board to add and reclassify positions, but we're concerned about abolishing positions in between town meetings.
Right.
So that's the context. This is between town meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, that's only new in the last 3 hours, so I haven't had a chance to go back to the Personnel Board with that one. So where we are again on this thing is that the version you saw, the Town Council is going to reorder some of the paragraphs, make it consistent throughout, and I'll send that out to you hopefully by Friday or Monday, and ship it out again to Bob Hiss and ship it out to the Personnel Board. And our committee is meeting Tuesday to vote on this, and we would hope that you would agree to co-sponsor.
Yeah, Rick, I think your committee's done a fabulous job, having sat through, and we talked for more than a couple hours and discussed some of these changes, and I know that you guys have worked very well with the Personnel Board. I think this is something that needs updating, and it's something that, after going through it and getting to really understand why we're making these changes, times have changed. We're in a strong form of government. We promised that we would do that. It was part of the plan. And so I'd look forward to seeing the new copy. I am in favor of supporting this.
Him as well.
So Rick, I have a question for you. The last time you were considering submitting this for last spring, and it got pulled because there was substantial disagreement, I think it's fair to say, between the Personnel Board and the Town Government Study Committee on this issue. Where is that now? Have the parties come more to an agreement, or is there still
Well, we had
a
a
wide
meeting.
area of disagreement?
I don't think there's a wide area of disagreement, but I don't want to speak for them. We had a meeting back about approximately 6 weeks ago, which I think went very well. Again, I don't want to speak for the chairperson of that board, but we certainly made progress, substantial progress, and so
That's good.
eliminating the word abolish, I don't know if that's a concern for them. I mean, actually, the practical aspect is, I'm not aware in my lifetime that they've ever abolished an occupied position.
Well, I think their big concern, at least in the spring, was wanting to be able to approve.
That was the...
Where are they? Have they agreed with your
I
position?
thought they were, at the last meeting 6 weeks ago, I thought they were, understanding of that change and were willing to accept that. But whether they voted on that, I'm not, so I guess, I hesitate to say till I get the latest revision out to them.
I think, I'm speaking from my prior life, the efficiency of government, especially in hiring, because hiring goes on in here, or in your office, and sometimes you could have to wait up to a month to get Personnel Board approval to get that person hired, and I think just for the purpose of efficiency of town services, it only makes sense. And going back to what you said, Rick, when you first came in here, that DOR report was pretty definitive in the way, what it said, the recommendations it made. Is that 13 or 14? How many years is that since that came in? What year was it?
That's 4 years.
2013.
Okay, see, 2013, so it was pretty clear when it came out.
I agree, and I think that this board has the utmost respect for everyone on both committees, and we know sometimes change is very difficult. But with that being said, we made a commitment to get to a strong form of government with a strong town administrator. It's now time to implement so that we can actually move forward and be more efficient. We say that word a lot. That is our goal. You're going to hear it a lot, efficiency, because you know what? Towns now are being, they're cash-strapped. We have an obligation to look outside the box, go regional where we can, and try to be most efficient inside, maximizing the talent that we have. And I think, so I'm hopeful that we'll have a nice resolution to this, and that we'll be able to all get on board and support this as an article at fall town meeting.
So the situation is that we would vote next Tuesday night to approve an article. The recommendation we would circulate, and during the month of August, and up to such time as we meet with the warrant committee, give everybody a chance to review and comment on the recommendation. So the recommendation that you'll be receiving is not in cement. It's in fact, take a look at it, and that's why there's a chance over the next 4 or 5 weeks for the recommendation to be altered. But certainly get the article in by the deadline, and we'll work on the recommendation, and again, get the feedback from the other elected boards. And the goal is to obviously have a solid recommendation for the warrant committee to consider as they meet in August and September.
The closing date, Katie, what do we have to have?
August
August
7th.
7th.
So
And
that's
the
why
article
we-
is just a, few lines.
The article-
It's
so
the
the article is-
recommendation that has all the meat in it. The article is
Right.
basically,
But it certainly is consistent,
Nothing.
Mr. Chairman, with the Town Administrator Act. It's very consistent with what we did on that. And it also, Richard, is absolutely consistent with the need in this environment competing for folks to be able to get a job offer out there and to have that person be able to get an acceptance, get essentially an award of the position, if you will, on a timely basis so they don't leave and go elsewhere.
Right.
That's right.
so there's still plenty of time to make changes to this recommendation
Yes,
through the month of August.
yes.
Okay.
So, and that's, as I said, we're going to go back over, we're going to take a look, we're going to probably review that, we'll review the recommendation as well as the article itself Tuesday night.
Because obviously, it's going to be the warrant committee's recommendation, so you're going to have to go present it to them, and
Right,
there could be
right.
some further changes to it there.
Yeah, I would think its process probably goes until mid-September, I would think.
Okay.
Whatever, I'm not sure when they're going to go to print, but what's the date of the town meeting itself?
October 23rd.
23rd, right, so whatever their printing deadline is, probably mid-September.
Probably, Emily probably knows better than anybody.
So,
Well, Rick, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
your update.
thanks
Thanks, Rick. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Take care.
Next on our agenda is a conference with Diane Agostino, Commission on Disability update. She's going to provide us an update on the Commission's work. Good evening, Diane.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the invite. I appreciate any opportunity to try to let residents know that we exist and the work that we're doing. And I wanted to begin with the legal charge. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to review it, but I do recall in years past, people like Jeff Grant and Enid Gamer, working so hard with, residents who came to them to assist. So I'll just read through a few of them for the people at home to be aware of what the charge is. So it's interesting because some people will say handicapped people versus, in fact, the placard for this building had a handicap commission, which now we have a commission on disability. And when you think of people, they may have a disability, but that certainly doesn't mean that they're disabled. And many people with disabilities work around those disabilities to exceed in production sometimes, which is awesome. But one of the first things is to research local problems of people with disabilities. And last year during an annual event that we had, well, we hope to be annual, will be second hopefully this year, we invited town residents to come in, and a person who works for the State Department brought to our attention a local problem where an individual who's blind was crossing the streets to get to the trolley, to get to work in Boston. And when we hear about traffic issues in this town, we have people who have their eyesight having difficulty crossing streets safely. So to think that he was doing this every day, twice a day, we're thrilled that through Cynthia Geis's advice, we were able to get on the agenda, on the budget, the new traffic signal lights, as well as the study committee, or the study of future audible pedestrian signals, not handicap signals, but audible pedestrian. We're all learning this language to be more considerate of individuals in different ways. So to research the problems by having a townwide meeting that assists. Advise and assist municipal officials and employees in insurance compliance with state and federal laws and regulations that affect people with disabilities, which the American with Disabilities Act has been around for over 26 years now. And yet, cities and towns received a notice from the U.S. Justice Department, I think it was about a year and a half ago, notifying cities and towns, you have to abide by this too. There could be expenses to it, budgets are tight, and yet, if an individual could possibly be injured or left, at home, unable to leave their house because of a disability, then we have an obligation, a legal obligation to assist them. So today, the department heads were able to have a presentation. I don't know if either weren't able to make it. And the goal is to have both the department heads, the committee, boards, commission members, all of them hear such a presentation so that in the fall we'll be able to have this townwide meeting with the residents as well as with department heads, boards, commissions. It has to filter all the way through town government. It's not just a one-stop proposition. So, in fact, by doing this, we're hoping we can try to determine what are the different types of disabilities. I know we've had a few residents come, and I'm learning of disabilities. I know many don't understand my disability, but I'm learning of disabilities that I've never heard of before, and that people have serious issues with living in Milton. And we don't have answers for all of them for how to help these people, but the mere fact that we're here, willing to help, will make a difference in their lives. Coordinate and carry out programs designed to meet the problems of people with disabilities in coordination with the programs of the Massachusetts Office on Disability. We do have support from the state. There's many different departments that we can turn to. In fact, this meeting that we had about a year and a half ago, might have been one of the first meetings where we had an interpreter for someone who was, legally deaf or hard of hearing even. And it was quite a process just to get through. How are we going to pay for it? The commission doesn't have a budget, we don't have a secretary, and we really don't have a lot of members right now. But we'll get to that in a minute. So review and make recommendations about policies, procedures, services, activities, and facilities of the departments, boards, agencies of the town. And I met with Mike the same way I previously had met and was well-received by Anne Marie Fagan with some of the materials that I've picked up along the way, such as the Center for Disease Control providing a fragrance-free workplace. Now, there are the extremes with fragrances where people become seriously disabled, but you lose a lot of employee time just from migraines. And migraines can be from the lights overhead, whatever intensity they have, to the fragrances. So it sounds like something where years ago, let's not have smoking in the places of business. And everybody kind of fought that, but looking back today, now what we know and what we've learned, I think the fragrance, the Center for Disease Control, even their rental property has to be completely fragrance-free. And I've shared a copy of their policy with Mike, and maybe he could share it with you. You might enjoy reading it because you can save money with employees being more productive and not being out sick with migraines. Provide information, referrals, guidance, and technical assistance to individuals, public agencies, businesses, and organizations in all matters pertaining to disability. And this is something that, now that we've gotten out more publicly, people have called and asked questions. We do have quite a few residents that have attended the meetings, and we're very open. We want to hear from the residents. We want to hear what their needs are, whether it's their child or their grandmother or themselves. We need to hear from them in order for us to do our job, which is to help them. And 6, coordinate activities of other local groups organized for similar purposes. We've actually been contacted from different commissions, Randolph, there's another one in Pembroke. Some of them actually collect used canes, wheelchairs, and I wish Milton had a storage place. Keep this in mind, because if we had a storage place, the need is there. And it's such a shame. I know there's a place in Quincy I just learned about called AYR, and so AYER. So somebody, I think, was going to donate equipment to them, but in so doing, on our wonderful social media, other people learned about it so that if they needed something, they could go get it there. So the most important aspect of the charge that I wanted to mention is that we are required to have 10 meetings a year. However, to have 10 meetings, we need more than one person attending. And we currently have 2 residents. One has been seriously ill through most of the beginning of the year, which is another thing to expect, because the people appointed to the commission are to either have a family member who's disabled or be disabled. And so at one of the first meetings when we had 4 people there, I immediately said, so we're covered. And they kind of looked at me like, how are we covered? Eyeglasses they actually come under the American with Disabilities Act. So if you have eyeglasses at home, your employer is supposed to be cautious and considerate. If you need any assistance in the type of background lighting on your computers, if you need a larger screen, all sorts of things that I didn't even think about maybe 7 years ago, but that are becoming more prevalent. So the maximum we can have is 9 members. One of them is an employee of the town, and he's also the kind of part-time ADA coordinator. So I did request the Selectman's office to review the volunteer list, and there were 2 volunteers who had volunteered over 2 years ago, I heard. So I'm thinking, we've just gone through like 2 years desperate for help, and one of them has just recently had to withdraw his name. Work must have increased, which is a good thing for him, I guess. But there is another individual, Iris Habib, if I'm saying her name right, Jabed. She's a registered nurse. She's very anxious to be appointed, and she did submit, which I submitted to you. Did you receive a copy of her synopsis? No?
No.
Okay, so this discussion started in June, hoping the appointment could happen tonight. However, I didn't see it on the agenda. So when is your next meeting?
August 14th.
Oh, good. When I was sitting back there, I was thinking you were taking the month of August off. I'm glad to hear you're not. Rick Neely never allowed us to take a week off when we were on the board. But it would be wonderful if anyone sitting at home has any interest in helping others, especially others who might find it difficult to maneuver through this world in our little town. And while it has to be a resident, we actually help people who are both are either residents, employees, or visitors. If I go to another town and there is a situation for an elderly person, I'll pick up the phone and call that selectman's office. And in fact, in the state of Florida, when I called the people in charge in Boca Raton, they didn't know who their ADA coordinator was. It took them 2 weeks to get back to me. So we're a step above that. Everybody in town hall seems to know who the ADA coordinator is. So anything we can do to expedite the appointment of those additional people?
And Diane, there's other folks in town, I think, that we could connect to you.
Yep.
There's an incredible organization, the Challenger Baseball and Softball League, with the culmination of a lot of great parents who may have kids with disabilities, or also parents that don't, and they just volunteer. They may have an interest. So I will get word out to them as well, because I think that...
Appreciate it.
Yeah, having a whole different crowd of people that may have some interest and pave the way for the future, too, being young people as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's work because there's, the minutes to be kept and get posted. We have, if you take a peek at our website, we upgraded that immediately. In fact, some of the news media has said that they'll put the word out, but I know you each have your own avenues, so anyone
I'm going to
you
reach
can
out to them,
find.
and I'm sure...
Great, I'm
It
sure
wouldn't surprise me if we got a couple from that actual group
That'd be
that would have
great.
strong interest.
Yeah. I did bring the thought up to, I was just in discussion with the chief of police, Chief King. We do have a representative to the Council on Aging from the police department, and not all disabled people are elderly. I mean, we've got very, newborns who are born with disabilities. So if there's, any thoughts or discussions on coordinating, our meetings are very flexible. They can come in late, they can leave early, but we're looking for just people who want to think with us and be the eyes and ears to find, is there someone in a home in our town who's not leaving their home because they can't, and they don't know how to get that help? I know during the storm of 2015, a lot of people with handicaps couldn't get out and about because they couldn't open that side of the vans. So, little things like that, the snow piles along the sidewalks. So that would be huge if we can get on the agenda.
So Diane, how many members do you currently have serving?
Actually, Joe Prondak and myself. The third person, we tried a conference call him, but he was spent 17 weeks in the hospital this year already.
Okay.
So,
Well, we're going to work on some outreach. What you're doing is really good for the town, and I think that you're raising a lot of good points. There are a lot of people that are in need out there, and
we just
there's-
want to find them and help them.
And there's a lot to learn, and to make us stronger.
yeah. So today, meeting with the department heads was a great start. We want to continue with that. At the last meeting, the second resident who just had to resign due to health issues with his family was going to attend. Turned out I was the only one there. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what's that new bylaw we passed about minimum attendees? And I did ask town council a few months ago through Mike and Susan Galvin to get clarification on that, because when you really have a committee that's dwindled down, so many people had family issues that they had to attend to.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as they tried to be there, all of a sudden I found myself sitting there by myself. I said, okay, I don't think this works. I don't think a committee of one can take a vote. But that was one of the big things, was having a second meeting in the fall. So if you could assist through Mike with picking out a date to publicize that this is about the American with Disabilities Act, this is about you, this is about our community, learning how we can help you, that would be a great help. And then just a few more points. Tedeschi's, as you know, probably, was bought out by 7-Eleven, and so they've submitted variances. I know the project of the Falcones along Adams Street, there were all these concerns. How could we possibly make the barber shop, the beauty shop, and the hairdresser handicap accessible? And it was worked out. So we have not yet met, since I'd really like to have more than myself and just Joe attend. We haven't reviewed what their proposal is, but to think that Tedeschi's it's going to be 7-Eleven, Randolph Ave, Dyer Ave, if residents who have a disability could easily get to those stores and then not be able to get
Access
up.
them.
Right. I mean, it's not all about wheelchair access. You can have a bad back and have trouble doing an incline. So, have trouble opening a door. Joe taught me, 15% pressure on pull doors. So if anyone has trouble opening a door anywhere. But I'd like an explanation on also Curry College. They might be trying to beat under the wire. There's going to be new legislation, hopefully. It's been 9 cycles, which would be 18 years, that the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board has been trying to get, if you have renovations and you're using the second floor for anything. So our own Walter White is on the MAB board, and I was very happy. We have not been to Curry yet. We're waiting to set the date. I was happy to read a letter that it's been postponed, giving them a variance not to have to put an elevator in because they're going to check about putting a chairlift to the second floor. Because if you really think it through, the American with Disabilities Act says everyone can apply for the job at Curry College's, I think it's the IT building. So if they can apply for the job, but then they can't get to the second floor, are we in compliance? I'm all about being in compliance. So Tedeschi's, Curry College are a few of them. It was a pleasure working with the Eustis Estate. I don't know if they enjoyed our recommendation because it cost them a lot of money and time, but I'm sure that people who are disabled can access those rooms much easier now. And MAB, Tom, what's his name, Hurley, I think it is, he said they weren't happy campers, but they did it, and it came out much better because of our recommendations when we were there. 3 points that you have so many people that you know, if you could help us with. Handicap placards that hang on the mirror of a car are not hanging there to say, I'm driving and I'm handicapped. They're only for parking. There's actually a $50 fine for driving with them. You see them all over town. I don't think people realize there's a fine, but when you watch the news, if you ever see an accident where a pedestrian's hit, several times I've noticed the placard was there, and it really blocks your vision. So if you can share with your friends, family, whoever, that the placard, put it up on the dashboard while you're driving. I know what they worry about is hanging it up and getting a ticket, but then they can write to the ticketing division and have it removed. Medic alert bracelets are really important because some people cannot state what their disability is when the EMTs arrive. So a real medic alert where there's an 800 number, they can contact someone, get help for you. And then our own Smart 911, which the former chief was very instrumental in getting. People really should be encouraged to register their family members. I know a lot of the older people may not, have that computer access. But aside from those points, it would be wonderful, and I really look forward to having a fall meeting open to the residents with, just make it a family affair of everybody. Did you have any thoughts on the document, the little synopsis I gave you, any suggestions or?
You mean the email?
Yeah.
We got that very late the town computers were down, so at least I saw it late
I
this
was wondering
afternoon.
what I heard, something about that.
Yeah, they were down.
Yeah.
I did read through it, and I think that, as I said earlier, the work that you're doing is great. I think that, you do a lot more. We're learning a lot more about disabilities and the challenges for people who have them. And I think that we should be a town that strives to be one of the best in the Commonwealth. So I think that, one of my commitments will be to try to help you recruit members.
Great.
Yeah.
I think I will share with you, it was 2 meetings ago where someone, a resident who heard me speak at town meeting, approached me, and he wanted to share his child's story. His child's in his 20s, and because his child's written about it publicly, I won't say his name, but this comes into play with the airplane noise and the traffic noise. I can't remember the actual name of the disability, but noise is literally agonizing pain to him. So the father and mother had to soundproof the whole house. And knowing what it's like to not be able to just walk outside your door whenever you want, because the sound of a pin hurts, Those are the types of things that it would be great, shoot me an email or share my email address or my phone number. Joe's really helping out with the ADA. I did discuss with Mike that the way the laws are going, some cities and towns are advertising for part-time ADA coordinators. I know Joe's got a full plate because I know he's construction. So put that also in your bonnet too. I know it costs money, but it's just so needed. We don't really know. We don't have the numbers, and that's what we're working on getting. What are the percentage of people who have sight issues? And the State Department has some numbers, but would really appreciate.
Well, I think your committee could collect data and could be very useful to how we operate moving forward.
All privately,
Right.
Not publicizing
Sure.
it.
Diane, do you want to follow up with that woman that you mentioned was going to submit some paperwork that we haven't seen and maybe try to get that in?
So you didn't get it?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We
Right,
we haven't seen it.
she's
so-
probably watched, I told her, I said, don't even bother coming tonight, but, she can probably tune in.
She won't have to come.
And-
We can just get it submitted.
Oh, I
before
know,
we get
I
on the
know, but-
agenda.
Volunteer form, and anyone else who's watching and might like to apply, they just need to contact the Selectman's office and
Right.
ask for the volunteer form and
Yeah.
fill it out, email it back in.
It
and we can
it would
consider
be
them.
really great, because I've heard this in other areas, if the volunteer forms are actually posted on the town website, so people.
They
when
are on the
They are
website.
on there. Oh, they're on there.
Really?
Yeah.
No, not the blank form. Once people volunteer, so that everyone knows, oh, they got my, because these two people were like,
Well, it
I
has,
never
it
got a
has,
call back.
phone numbers, email
Well,
addresses,
no,
that's my
not
identifying
that,
information
just,
on
a name, maybe, street or something, just to know that their name got in there and it's on the list. Because I'm thinking you may have people who volunteered for other committees that might be willing to help this committee.
They might, and you could contact Barbara and go through the book, because
Yeah.
the
All right.
book is kept that has all those forms in it.
Yeah. All right?
Well, thank you again.
Keep me posted, and
welcome.
I'm looking forward to your,
Absolutely. Thanks again.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Diane.
Thing to put Andy's stuff on the screen.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a conference, a report from Milton's representative to the Massport Community Advisory Committee, and a report from the chair of the Airplane Noise Advisory Committee. I want to welcome both Andy Schmidt and our Logan Massport CAC representative Cindy Christensen for an update. Good evening.
Evening.
Hi.
Evening.
Good evening.
Would you like me to start?
Yeah, that'd be great. First, I want to thank both of you for the countless hours of volunteerism that you put in. It's not easy, and we're all dealing with it every day. I noticed an increase at my house over the last 2 days.
That's for sure.
I've got literally the bellies of the planes going over my house more regularly than they have been in the past. So this is a town-wide issue. It's not just an issue for those that are under these superhighways that exist in the sky. This is actually a town-wide issue and one that we take very serious. So we want to thank you in advance for the work that you put in every day.
Okay, well, I'll start with a little bit of information on how bad it is, and then I'll go over what the MCAC has been up to. But there was a slide that was added, she may be getting it up, to your packet. It's one of the pieces of information that I presented at one of the aviation subcommittee meetings. And there are two examples, and unfortunately on Sunday we had another example, but we have examples all the time. Oh, that's Andy's. Do you have the other? Yeah, so just the two examples. One has to do with the number of planes that we had on a particular date.
There we go.
There we go. May 11th, there were 581 arrivals to 4R and 4L on that day. So that was in a plane every 1 minute and 40 seconds. So most of the people that I presented this to were a bit shocked by that. And one of the, unfortunate for some, but a good thing that happened with the closure of the 4Rs, I think more people have begun to understand just how bad it is to have, in this case, 16 hours of nonstop planes. The highlight at the bottom left just shows then the last 6 hours, and the last 5 hours of the 16. The winds were under 10 knots, and when winds are under 10 knots, they have an option as to where they can land the planes. The second example on the right was a period of time between April 25th to April 27th, where we had planes for 61 out of the 66 hours. And that's just, it becomes torture at that point. So there were 2 extended periods during that 66 hours where winds were less than 10 knots, and they could have changed planes. So what I'm saying with this is we need a runway use plan, and that's something that I'm trying to get the MCAC to tackle soon rather than later. What happened to us on Sunday was I counted the number of planes, not individually, but using something available online. There were 521 flights in, 17 hours that landed on 4R and 4L. Now, 94% of those flew over Milton, the 100% flew over Dorchester. And one of the things that I think we need to do is to keep these other communities in mind. Currently, Dorchester does not have an MCAC rep. They're limited to 6 reps from Boston, and Dorchester is currently not represented. So it is up to those of us that, they get the planes after we do, and they get every single one of them. So there's some real torture going on in Dorchester.
With that being said, and I just want to add quickly that I've begun regional discussions with elected officials throughout the Metro Boston area, and I've gotten incredible responses to create a coalition. I just got off the phone with Adrian Madero, who's the East Boston State Representative, who's going to join our coalition along with State Rep Dan Cullinane, Senator Mike Rush from West Roxbury, obviously our own Senator Walter Timilty and Bill Driscoll. We also have city councilors, Tim McCarthy, Ayanna Presley, Wu, all of them who are going to be on board. I think the goal would be from here on out, and I just say this quickly without interrupting your presentation for too long, but to have a city council hearing in Boston with our coalition, all of our electeds, and I think our voice will be much stronger. This is something that Representative Steve Lynch asked us to do a while ago. I think now's the time to do it and follow through. I think that Massport and the FAA won't have an opportunity to pick on any one. I think it's a larger problem. It's a metropolitan problem nationally, and I think that we have an opportunity to be the leaders in combating this problem. And
I think that's excellent, something we've needed for a long time. The more we can speak as a single voice, the further we'll get. And so I'm trying to do the same thing at the MCAC level. As far as I'm concerned, I try to look at these problems as not being divided by town boundaries, but a regional problem, because we have to fix it together.
It's a regional problem, and it's a national problem. So yeah. I think that it's great that people have been amenable to joining us. They're dealing with the same things we do. So
yeah, that's great. We've needed that. So thank you for that outreach. To talk about the MCAC work, I'm going to look at this. This is also a slide that I had. Yeah, there for the aviation subcommittee meeting. This was part of your packet. What it is on the left. Sorry, on the right. Yeah. Is one of Professor Hansman's slides from his presentation from May 5th. And on the left...
For people who are watching, Professor Hansman is the MIT professor that the FAA and Massport have retained to do this study of the airnaves.
Thank you, yes. And we call these studies the MOU RNAV studies because of the Memorandum of Understanding. So the material on the left that starts with summary is what I added because what was happening, so let me explain. They're using the term Block 1 and Block 2 to be what I would probably call Phase 1 and Phase 2. So Block 1 is supposed to be the easier things to look into. Block 2 is the more difficult, where they might be moving, checking to see if they can move paths around. What was happening with Block 1 that was not satisfactory, as far as I was concerned, is that we were being left out. They were only looking at departures on 22R, 15R, 33L, and 27. A little bit about an arrival, but this is something they've been looking at for almost 2 years now, so I didn't really count that. So one of the things I was successfully able to do is to get approval, Aviation Subcommittee approval, to include 4R, 4L arrival work as part of Phase 1. So what I've asked them to give us more information on is how dispersed can these, can the path be? What's happening now is we've got straight-in approaches, which just means they start out and they get their eye on the end of the runway and they just go in a straight line. And there are options to that called offsets, so they're just angled a little bit different. That's one of the things they're going to look at. The other thing that I was successful in getting included in Block 1 work is the problem that has come up maybe in the last 6 months and has become more noticeable to me, and that is that the planes, even when they're flying these GPS routes, don't seem to be flying where they're supposed to be flying. There seems to be this shift, a shift to the west, and I've tried to figure it out. I've tried to do groundwork, driving around. If you see me parked somewhere, it's because I'm looking up at the sky to try to see where these planes are going. But there does seem to be a shift.
I've noticed it recently.
Yeah. It's a little bit hard to figure it out, partly because the 4L usually is using a visual approach, and for a visual approach, they can fly where they want to fly. But a lot of them seem to be flying the GPS. The GPS is the satellite-based approach, and it's just like when you put it into your car GPS system, and you go from this point to that point to this point.
JetBlue's flying on that
Yeah.
GPS. But I've noticed on 4L in particular, and the scary thing is these pathways aren't far away from each other. When they see them coming in, they're coming in like this. Whereas where I live down near the middle school, I can get them coming directly over my house for 3-4 hours at a time, and then notice them 4 streets over to the left at times. So that's the visual.
Yeah.
But then you look I hear the ones on 4R, I see them, and a lot of those can go over Milton Academy at times. And I can see those and hear those. So
Yeah, and
actually,
see, that's a
where I am,
shift. That's
believe
a
it or not,
shift.
I'm getting double.
I believe it.
I get them from both sides.
Yeah.
But it's increasingly concerning, I think, that this is becoming really a tunnel for them.
Yeah, well, I call this the sandwich, and we've got many, many people in the sandwich, and of course, even more so if you extend it into Dorchester, who are being sandwiched by these planes. So it's bad to be on the outside part of the sandwich, but it's worse to be on the inside part. So one of the things I've asked for in Block 1, and a lot of people, this is the only set of parallel runways that gets used for arrivals. That you'd think that you'd have the opposite direction, that you'd have parallel runways. I mean, they're in this direction, then they're going to be in that direction too. But there's restrictions on the arrivals in the other direction. So this is the only set of viable parallel runways that they have for arrivals. And I think a lot of communities, I learned this from the Logan CAC work, they don't understand what that means as far as the actual pain that it's causing the people, particularly those in the
Why are there restrictions on the arrivals?
history, politics.
The usual.
Yeah.
The usual.
I think the bottom line is that, and the elected officials that I've spoken with, and they're from the surrounding Metro Boston and or around Boston, which affect us, they all believe that we need to share the equity. They all say that. And I think that's the important thing. We know that we're not going to say goodbye to planes, but our approach is that we could limit the amount of planes that actually travel down these paths so regular.
Yeah, and that's where a runway use plan would help us. The other thing that I say at the MCAC meetings, because this is what I hear the Milton saying, and I also believe it, we don't want a situation where we have no planes. I mean, we know not to expect that. But what we would like is to try to mirror the way planes used to be flown across Milton, that being higher with more dispersion. So that's, and I believe their GPS, their radar, their satellite-based navigation is capable of that. It's just they've got to do a little bit more work to do that.
Have them come in from a steeper descent instead of, in other words, come in at a higher altitude and drop in quickly versus a very prolonged, low.
Where they have to do that at other airports around the country just based upon terrain.
One of them's Dunville, where I just
Yeah,
was.
that was.
But also the retrofitting of with the Vortex generator,
Yes.
which is only $5,000. roughly apiece, when this is a multi-billion-dollar industry that could easily afford this, so.
Yeah, well, I've got some information about the altitude, and, I mean, this is not, some of these solutions sound simple, just fly them higher. We get pushback on things like that, but I'll just go on. Let me say that the 27 departures, of course, also are a concern here, because when people aren't being woken by the 4s, they're waking up to the 27s. So what's happening with the 27 departures in Phase 1 pretty much is happening with some of these other departures. What the consultant has reported is that thrust and speed changes that could benefit communities like Milton and other further out communities, they actually increase the noise closer in to Logan. And these closer in communities, Winthrop, Chelsea, they're already heavily burdened. So one of the principles that we're trying to work towards is not making somebody who already has a bad situation, not making their situation worse. And I think that is a reasonable principle to go on. So some of the best chance for relief for the 27 departures will occur in Block 2, where they start looking at the dispersion. There's a record of decision on the 27 departures that, in my opinion, unfairly forces them to take a southbound curve instead of going out straight west from the end of the runway. There's a lot of, recently, of the 6 Boston MCAC representative appointed by Marty Walsh, 3 are underneath the 27 departures. So, which is good, because my focus has been mostly on the 4s because nobody else is focusing on those. I try to not leave out the 27s, but it's a lot of work to try to focus on both. So now I've got partners who will work with me on the 27 departures, and I'm hoping that we can get some movement on that. So let me mention something about the Block 2 work. The preliminary work for this is starting this summer, and they're reporting back to us in the fall. So what they planned on looking at for the 4R, 4L arrivals are steeper approaches, but in their slides, which I can provide if you want to see them, they're online, they continue to state that there's significant concerns from airline technical pilots in the tower for operational feasibility. The same thing, they say the same thing when another idea is to have a 2-stage steep approach where up until about 5 miles out, they're very high, and then they change slopes instead of a continuous slope like they supposedly do now, but they really don't. So the same concerns for that. I've researched this a little bit, and I believe some of their arguments are just totally bogus, which is what we find a lot. So I'm going to be fighting that too, and asking for more explanation as to why they can't have the planes coming in higher. It's really, I'm disappointed in some of the information that I now understand was provided to us in these slides and in the presentation, because I looked up some of the references, and it's just, it's deceptive, I believe, and they're not, they have to look at flying the planes higher. I want to point out that one of the reasons that I believe the planes are lower across Milton now is because of the RNAV approaches. They're able to have more planes in a shorter distance, so the separation is less. What happens, because there's laws that protect passengers from having too many late arrivals to their destination, and so airlines are very concerned about this, and so a lot of the planes over Milton cut in line instead of going all the way out to Randolph to get in line. When they cut in, they come in at a low level because they can't be up as high as the other planes that are coming in. They have to come in below those planes. So consequently, they're going really slow and really low over Milton, and that's part of the problem.
I've noticed, I was at Nantasket Beach a week ago, and I noticed the planes, they curve in and come, but they're at a much higher altitude than they are crossing Hull than they are Milton.
Yeah, and it's the
Milton
cut-in.
is without a question much lower than any other community that I've been in.
Yep.
meaning outside of Boston.
Uh-huh. So a couple of the other things that they planned on looking at in Block 2 but are not getting a lot of green light is something they call the lighthouse-like approach, where they take the current approach to 33L, which is a curved approach. It's a almost a circle that comes in at, they can use it at night to fly in over the water to avoid waking up people in Hull. That's the lighthouse approach. So the thought was that they would take that same curve and curve it over to the 4R arrival. What that means is that if they don't modify that, then places like Hull, which are already heavily burdened, get even more burden. And that got a resounding no at the meeting. But if people had waited a little bit further into the slides, they would see that there's options for not flying over Hull. So that's something that I plan on continuing to pursue. Another path that they considered was over the highway approach, and that also got voted down. There's the reasons why have been multiple, but one of the original thought for this, and it's a reasonable thought, is, if you add more noise to an already noisy area, it's not like adding noise to a quiet area. It reminds me of adding one more kid to a birthday party. It's you might as well do it, right? It doesn't really add that much more noise to the party. But, of course, a lot of the highway through Milton is below homes, so that's one of the reasons why they think it won't work. And I believe there's some pushback from some of the other communities, which, these are communities that are not already heavily burdened. So as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't have to be over the highway, but there does have to be some dispersion looked at for Block 2 work.
The highway you're referring to is 93? And the lighthouse is Boston Light on Outer Brewster Island, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Those are two different possibilities. One's a curved approach, and the over the highway is a little bit curved, but it's more of a straight in. It would be considered more like an offset. An offset is still a straight path, but it's just the angle is not straight in.
If you took the lighthouse approach, you're flying almost exclusively water from Boston Light till you get to Castle Island. Yeah, that's just the path you would take. There's no land there. It's all water. You fly in a ship, I could see why that would be preferred, because it takes it away from the residents.
What we've learned is they said that it's not cost efficient to go over the water,
Yeah,
which
it's not.
in a billion-dollar industry, it's hard to hear.
Yeah. Well, and Hull really is heavily burdened, so we do have to, consider that whenever we're proposing things. And there is a way, these curved approaches, instead of calling them RNAVs, they're called RNPs. And planes have to have specific cockpit computerized equipment to fly the RNPs. I believe, I forget what the number is, maybe 75%? Or
Only 60%.
60% are equipped right now. But the same was true for RNAVs. 10 years ago, they weren't all equipped. So it's something for the future where they can use these curved approaches. The problem is, of course, they can't cram as many planes into a curved approach as they can a straight-in approach. But for something like at night, that's why they're looking into this lighthouse approach. Demand is low. And, the demand is low on Saturday mornings, times when people like to be out here in Milton. So that's another possibility. I wanted to mention that one of the main obstacles that I'm facing is that others, including Massport and the consultants, constantly and consistently say that the arrivals to the fours, nothing has changed.
And we know that's not true.
Yes, but finding evidence of that and data of that has been a real challenge for me. If you look at the RNAV and the instrument approaches, the path is identical, the glide slope is identical, and they can show that the amount of use is pretty close to identical. So for those three things, the possible changes, but that I currently have no data to show, is this separation problem where there's a plane every minute and a half. The proportion that are visible and visual, most of them are visible, but the proportion that are visual compared to instrument, because the The more visual, the more dispersed the planes will likely be. The problem with that is, I just learned today that there may not be sustained data on the proportion that are visual, but that's something I'm working on. The precision of the GPS compared to the radar, even with the instrument approaches. The FAA does studies on how close planes are following these RNAV paths, and they're off in the Boston area by about 3 feet horizontally, and I guess I think it's about 6 feet vertically. So that means if you're getting a plane, seeing the belly of the plane, you're going to see many bellies of the plane. They're just not off by much. The other thing that's happening is there's this increased use of the 4L, which is causing more of a sandwich problem for Milton. The fleet mix has changed with more heavier, bigger planes. And then the altitude, again, due to this, the cut-ins. But finding data and getting unfortunately, in my opinion, the consultant is not approaching this like a detective might. They're taking the statements from Massport that nothing has changed, and they're not trying to tease out. I've presented a technical appendix on some statistics that I would like for them to garner for this, and that's another challenge that I'm facing, is actually getting them to do that. But I think we can show that there's been changes.
I think we got a few thousand people in town whose eyes aren't lying.
Yeah, it's
Well, and even when we've heard any number of cases where people have guests in from out of town, and they'll pause and say, is it always like this? So it's not us all of a sudden looking up in the sky and say, oh, I have too many planes. It's being able to document the number of hours and as well as the outside feedback that we've got a problem, and that problem needs to change.
So one of the things I can show, and I haven't taken this to the MCAC yet, but I've looked at DNL, which is the noise metric that they're required to use by census block, and there's clear evidence that Milton's noise has increased in almost every census block, whereas other communities surrounding us, a lot of Quincy, almost all of Weymouth, Braintree, parts of Hingham until you get over to the Hull side, all of those areas have decreased. And so I can't say why they have decreased, but it sure looks like it's the concentration of RNAV paths over Milton that's causing that. So that's my one positive data evidence that I've been able to find. I just want to mention quickly, we've had, recently we had a general meeting at for the MCAC. The public can sign up for notifications. The MCAC is a state agency, so we operate under open meeting laws, and people are invited to come. All of our meetings are posted, and you can sign up on the website to get announcements about these meetings. So it's pretty simple. It's just massportcac.org. is the website. One of the things we're doing is we're hiring a executive director that, we're all volunteers, and so we're currently doing a search for an executive director. One of the other things that I think is important that shows some progress working with this MCAC is that we're working with Massport to develop a Fly Quiet program. This is basically a airline report card that other airports have used across the country to try to get airlines to be friendlier to communities. So if you've got questions, I'm available for that. If not, then
I think we should,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we got to give Cindy credit for getting these items into Block 1. And, initially, we weren't going to have anything that affects Milton, other than maybe the 27 departures a little bit. But there wasn't anything in the first phase that was going to help Milton. And you've managed to get this in, Cindy, through a lot of hard work. And Phase 2, we need those tests, the Canarsie approach and the highway approach, to be tested. There may be opposition from other communities, but they need to be tested. So continuing to advocate those is an important thing. So,
I agree.
So thanks for your hard work, because this really wasn't easy to get this into Phase 1.
No, it's amazing how difficult every little step is, but we're doing it. And the coalition is going to help tremendously, I think. Just, more like-minded people that really do see some of this is just, it's too much for any community to take. So.
Particularly on the 27s. Boston really ought to take the lead on that with we can support Boston on that, because it does affect us as well.
We
but
all
With
need
the
to,
money-
we all need to work together on all of
be
these.
something that we work with
And I
on.
think that, common minds will prevail, and I think our voice will be stronger as a collective group.
Where is the money for an executive director going to come from?
We're currently budgeted for $250,000 a year.
On the state level, out of the
At the
state budget?
state level. We have a request, and it's at the committee level at this point, to double that, because it's, an executive director can pretty much eat up most of that $250,000. What I hope, some of this money, if we can get the amendment passed to increase our budget to $500,000, is that we'll then have money for some independent consultants. Right now, the consultant, Professor Hansman, works for Massport, and
As
that's...
an employee or
No,
a paid
a
consultant?
contract, yeah. So we have not been able to get something as simple as the scope of work. And
So
so...
he's answerable to the Massport board,
Yes.
not to you?
Right. And, it's being played out as being different than that we're all one big happy family, but there's a lot of problems in transparency and getting, information. I mean, I've been working, I am on the aviation subcommittee board committee, and so I've been working through them and getting their approval to put things like this in there, but it's not easy, and we are independent of Massport, although we've been dependent on Massport to get started. This is something that really just got started in 2014, and we've been making small steps. I think eventually this will be one of the best ways for the region to get some relief. We have a statutory power to hold hearings, to request information. That's a stronger request for information than the open meeting law, open records law would give us. We're not using some of those things right now, and we need to. And I think it's partly because some of the other communities aren't as stressed as we are, and so I'm trying to push for these things, but everyone else is wanting to go at a slower pace. But we'll get there, because we should use the hearings to get a little bit more transparency.
I think that David's initiative, because and Congressman Lynch agrees with it, communities as far as Lincoln and pretty far from here that are representative in the case, but are not impacted any way, shape, or form. And I think bringing that nucleus that's within that 5-mile radius of the airport that's really taking the planes under 5,000, under 6,000 feet on a daily basis is really going to help in the long run.
I agree.
Well, yeah, Massport needs some limits. It's like they're in a candy store and they're eating every piece of candy that they want at the expense of the communities like Milton, like Winthrop.
Well, I agree. I think they need to be held accountable for the
Yes.
actions that are at hand. And I
Right.
think that we'll all, as electeds and as a group of people who are volunteers who do this work daily, will have the ability to be able to convey the message that this just isn't right and that it's unfair and possibly harming our communities to points that we really don't know yet.
Well, it's cost shifting. We all know that we need Logan here for the economic benefits, but don't shift the cost it's sacrificial. We've been calling them sacrificial neighborhoods, and Milton is definitely one of them. But there are many that are sacrificing financially and with their health, the community's health. So.
We look forward to next steps, and I know, Andy, you probably want to share some of your insight from ANAC as our advisory group. We're excited to hear some of your suggestions, because I think that it's probably going to go along with our greater message and how we can help.
Absolutely, and thank you. So first off, I checked the noise complaints this morning and this afternoon before I came over. They haven't been updated yet. So this is data as of May 31st. Congressman Lynch's office is usually the group that follows up with Massport to find out when they're going to post. Massport's been posting about a week or two late the last few months. So hopefully we'll get those out soon. But what we'll see on this slide here is that the trend, there are a couple of interesting trends going on right now. So the top line is U.S. flight volume, and the U.S. flight volume is going down, and that's in terms of number of flights per year. whereas Logan's flight volume has been on a steady increase since about 2009. And so we're in this strange situation where the overall system is losing volume, but we're gaining it somehow. Now, a lot of that is Massport driving tourism and so on, possibly part of GE's move to Boston and so on. But it's been a concerted effort to drive that volume up. Otherwise, we would likely be following the same type of downward progression. But just as a point of fact, if you look back at 2016, U.S. flight volume fell by about 7%, whereas Logan's flight volume increased by about 5%. So a pretty dramatic difference between the two. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see what this means to us. And so what we did was we took a look at 4-hour flight volume for 2016 and compared that to Logan as a whole. Now, I talked about Logan increasing at about 5% last year. 4-hour traffic increased by 14.1%, so almost triple the rate of increase that Logan saw overall in a market where volume is declining. And we took that further to map out what that means in terms of life for people under 4R. And that 51,858 jets per year equals the equivalent of one flight every 10 minutes, every hour of every day over the same houses for the entire year. Now, obviously that increases and decreases depending on what the volumes are. But just this past Sunday, just yesterday, it was something like one every 2 minutes from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9:45 at night. And for many people, that's simply unbearable. And there are a lot of people who say, oh, just move, oh, the planes were here first, and so on. But this is a problem that has been pushed upon us by others and will continue to impact the lives of the people in this town. So just a grounding element to see what that means in terms of the day-to-day. The slide that we see here is the number and percentage of complaints that have been filed on an annual basis. And this shows the last 4, but Milton has filed the most noise complaints of any Logan area community for each of the last 5 years. And as of May 31st, we'd already filed almost 11,500 complaints, so more than more than what we'd filed by this time last year. And that actually represents a bit of an expected decrease. And we say, well, the numbers are up, but how can they be decreasing? 4R/22L was closed from May 15th through June 23rd. So these numbers really only reflect half a month of volume for May. And so we're expecting the noise complaints to go back up to normal levels, if not above, for July, August, and so on. And the June numbers should literally be out any day now.
So Andy, not to take you off your presentation,
Yeah,
but
no.
just to backtrack 1 second, do you happen to have the numbers for 4L too? Because I know there's an increase.
Yeah,
And
I
I'd
can
be
get
very curious, because we talk about this sandwich effect.
Yeah.
Which is going to really, it's going to change the game a little bit more, I think. And I think that we need to stay a little bit ahead of that.
No, absolutely, and so these noise complaints are for all the runways that were affected by, but 4R and 4R is definitely the major culprit.
Sure.
But you're right, 4L
Well,
has been.
But I think that there'll be an increase, and so I think that when we look at our whole community, we're going to be affected. More people will be affected from not
Yes.
only just under the tunnel, but as the sandwich effect occurs, you'll get the sounds from both. So I think that this is part of, what we're going to talk about with our strategy moving forward.
Absolutely, and anecdotally, people have been reporting more use of the 4L visual, and so and we've talked about it. It seems like they're trying to balance the load a little bit more, which is good in concept, but not great for the town because
It's not good for the town at all.
because you're just putting more planes over the same people.
Correct.
Yeah, so some of the reason I push so hard for Block 1 work with this 4L, 4R, is that I believe it was Bill Driscoll who coined the term, how many strings in a harp can there be as far as landing onto the 4R, 4L? And one of the that's a good question, but one of the points that we need to stay in touch with is, okay, let's say there's 6. Can there be 6 paths? Well, if there's 6, what about people in those sandwiches? We're just creating more sandwiches. And so one of the thoughts I've had is that not only do we need a runway use plan, but we need a flight path use plan too. So let's say we have 6, what can they do? And this is something that the engineers have to tell us.
How can they modify each one?
What can they do to make sure that people in the sandwich aren't,
Getting it all the time?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, sorry.
No, no worries. So going on to the next slide, so one of the wonderful things about this issue is that that the accessible data tells some pretty interesting stories. And so this is a screenshot from the Bureau of Transportation Statistics National Transportation Noise Map. And it has 2 types of noise, road noise and airplane noise. The road noise is pretty easy to identify. You can see all the roads on there. The airplane noise is also pretty easy to identify by the plumes that you see there on the screen. And what is plainly evident is that there are parts of Milton that are at least as noisy as downtown Boston, and that the towns surrounding Milton are far quieter than Milton itself. So for those who are looking at this on the screen, where you see white there's so little noise, so little aviation noise, that they simply don't record it. So there are certainly towns that are closer or as close to Logan as Milton is that have less noise than we do. There are also some areas that are the greater Boston or the greater Logan community that are as close to Milton that have no noise or relatively no noise compared to what we have. So it certainly helps illustrate the issue a lot better, and even talking to some of our elected officials and sending them the map, they usually get a pretty visceral reaction, saying just I had no idea, I didn't realize that it was this bad, and the benefit, if you will, of this map is that you can plug in your own address to see how much noise you're getting, see which of these bands that you live in. Now, going on to the noise complaints overall, we have filed more noise complaints than the next 9 most affected municipalities combined, and this is a running total from January 1st, 2012 to May 31st, 2017. And this has been a trend that's been pretty constant throughout the last 5 years, with Milton filing the most complaints. Now, most of that is just that we get these long periods of time where you get a plane over and over and over again. So you don't get a rest. You don't get a chance to forget about it. And if you're someone who would file, say, 1 complaint for every 5 planes or every 10 planes or so on, by having so many planes one after the other, you hit that threshold many more times than you would in any of these other towns. Now, it's not to say that they don't have problems. They do. But the issue is that we continue to lead in areas that we'd really rather follow, and like to get us back to something that's a bit more normal, a bit more appropriate. We also took a look at the surrounding community, so Weymouth, Dorchester, Hyde Park, Quincy, Canton, Dedham, Randolph, Braintree, and Mattapan, and compared our noise complaints to theirs, same time period, 2012 to May 31st, 2017. And these results back up what we saw on the map, that the skies over Milton are noisier than the skies around Milton, with us filing nearly 17 times as many noise complaints as our immediate neighbors have. Now, this dynamic, this imbalance, is something that should have been foreseeable when Massport created the CAC system, and in many ways reinforces some of the challenges that we've been having. Either many of these towns don't have noise, and all these towns don't want noise, and it's been a burden throughout. Now, the next slide has actually changed from its typical, where it would have Milton having the most callers of any community. Now, you'll remember that I said that 4R was closed from mid-May to late June. Those planes had to go somewhere, and many of those planes ended up on runway 15. And as a result, the people of Medford rose up, and their number of callers rose from 57 callers in April to 393 callers in May. Now granted, they're triple our population, but the use of 15 certainly has grown over the last couple months because of that closure, and that exposure to additional noise and results in the complaints that you would expect to see from that type of exposure. Now, one of the issues that we continue to have is one of demand. So when demand is high, they will use the 4s because you have the greatest throughput. But when they had to use, when they lost that parallel runway because 4R was closed and had to use 15, they ran into a different situation, which was the late arrivals. So I was talking to Massport the other day about some issues with the monitor, but they brought up that I had filed some complaints about using the 4s in times where they really should be using other runways. And their response was, well, when we use those other runways, like when 4R was closed, we get into delays. And my response, as politely as I could make it, was that's really not our problem. That this is a man-made issue, and it's a man-made issue that they've had a hand in creating. So they should be a part of creating the solution to this problem and have it be a solution for everyone. Now, Congressman Lynch has been wonderful in his support, as have all of our federally elected and of course, our town elected officials. And one of the points that he brought forward was the issue, David, you brought it up earlier, vortex generators, and the ability to retrofit some of these planes, the A320 series planes, with vortex generators to keep them quieter on approach. And you mentioned us being leaders. That idea, and the pushing for that idea came from Milton. So we continue to operate from a regional point of view and wanting to make it better for everyone. But there are certainly some good areas where we've taken the lead in raising some of the awareness.
It came from Milton, but it was largely because of the work of Andy. So thank you to Andy for that. And that's one of, we're going to mention, but that's one of Congressman Lynch's amendments to the FAA reauthorization bill,
Right.
is to require
Vortex
direct
generators.
the FAA to require the vortex generator. So Andy has really put a lot of emphasis on that and gotten a lot of attention to it.
Thank you. And Mike's letter certainly helped and got the awareness of the congressman, and was specifically referenced in the press release, which was wonderful.
Yep.
Now, in terms of the recommendations, we're up to, how many recommendations are we up to? We're up to 12, and the newest one, anything that's in green is something that has been acted upon. The one that was crossed out was one that the feedback that we got was that we were doing well enough on our own that we didn't need to engage lobbyists. But where I want to take you to is actually on the next page, recommendation number 12. And this was a vote that ANAC took to move as many elements as possible from the current MIT study, from Block 2 to Block 1, so that we can start to get some of the benefit of this activity sooner rather than later. And as Cindy pointed out, that we can look at some of these issues the same way across the various runways, across the various arrivals.
That's great. Well, I think I looked through these recommendations, and they're all spot on, and I think that we have a commitment to the entire town to keep them updated on a regular basis. And what I'd like to see this board, I'm going to speak on their behalf, I know they'd agree that we get a monthly update so that we can, whether it doesn't have to always be formally in front of us, but a monthly update so that we can articulate all the good work that's being done every day and the communication that's being done regularly between ANAC, between our CAC rep, so that the people of Milton know that we are taking action every single week on this matter. That it's a matter that
Like every day, but yeah.
But I mean a weekly. It's basically a weekly occurrence where we talk about this.
Yeah.
Or a daily occurrence if you want to put it that way. But I think that the work that you guys have done has been incredible.
Thank you.
We're not even close to being done yet, but I think that we've got a good plan moving forward. We've got a good group with our advisory board and also with our reps to be able to make some solid ground and make up some ground.
I just want to go back to item 12. Is there something that we can do to help you with this now?
Well, it comes a little late, because by the time the ANAC met, we had already had a second aviation subcommittee meeting, and I was able to get the work that I described into that.
From Block 2 to Block 1?
Well, no, it was from nothing into
Okay,
Block
into Block
1.
Rich, I was at that ANAC meeting when this came up and was discussed, and we talked a little bit about the fact that, and Cindy was not able to be at that meeting, and so we talked a little bit about the fact that she was working on trying to get some other things into Block 1, and I think the committee, Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the committee was pretty agreeable to, if it's not going to be productive, and if it's going to be counterproductive in any way, then they wanted to put this idea forward, but they wanted to get the input of the CAC rep who's on the ground, kind of dealing with this a little more frequently than some of the members of the committee are. But it was a good idea to put it forward.
Yeah, that presentation was changing as he was presenting it, so that's part of the problem with the committee, just looking at that without having anybody there who had been at the presentation, because it was dynamic, it wasn't a static presentation.
Where do pilots, like, do you ever hear, the pilots, any input from pilots on this at all about it? I mean, they're the ones flying these planes on their preferred approach, they're flying instrument versus visual. I mean, obviously, there are times when you can't fly.
Right.
Is there any input at all from the pilots in any of this?
Yeah, we have a gentleman here in town who's met with me several times and actually has helped me come up with a proposal that I hope they will look at in Block 2. And it basically, the way I think of it is it cuts out the cut-ins, which is a large part of
Eliminates
Milton's
cut-in.
problem.
Eliminates
the cut-ins, which, those are the ones coming in low. And my understanding from him is that it also keeps the planes at a faster speed over Milton, and they're basically gliding in. There's no thrust going on, so they're gliding in, but they're moving across faster. So I tried even at the Logan CAC level to get this idea studied and wasn't able to. I think I've got a better chance in Block 2 work for that. And again, these are all, I think of these as tests. They're simulations, they put them on the computer, they try to see, okay, where's the noise going to change? Are we going to have a reduction, an increase in noise, that kind of thing. So nobody needs to worry now that any plans are being made to send more planes over their neighborhood. It's just, everything's a test at this point.
Right.
And one of the challenges is just the test itself and the software, knowing what goes into it. So
Oh, that's a whole other story.
So one of the things that we discovered, and we've seen it ourselves, we've heard it from a lot of people, that we're 7 to 10 miles out, depending on where you are in town.
Right.
Planes are flying overhead with their gear down.
Right.
2,200 feet in the air, 1,700 feet by the time they get to the marker. 1,700 feet in the air, you don't need to have your gear down yet. But because the airspace can be a little complex and there aren't a lot of rules regarding how the airspace is managed, sometimes the pilots will put their gear down and sometimes they won't. Now, what does it matter if you put the gear down? What matters is that it creates drag. And so increased drag means you need to have your power all the way up in order to maintain speed. So while it may seem that the gear itself doesn't create a lot of noise, and any of you who've been on a plane, you can hear when the gear goes down, that's the noise of the plane shifts. But having to keep your power up in order to maintain speed not only increases noise, it worsens your fuel consumption, or it accelerates your fuel consumption. So it becomes really a double whammy for the populations and really even for the airlines themselves. So ideally, and this is something we need to talk about further, it would be great to see slightly more stringent rules in terms of how flights are operated and this person that Cindy's talked to was kind enough to share some of the things that he's seen at other airports, but flap setting, thrust setting, things like that, so that you can manage noise appropriately and manage it proactively on a more aggressive basis.
Yeah, some of those metrics are what could go into this Fly Quiet program that I mentioned that the MCAC is working on with Massport. So
I think we can't let this segment of the meeting close without really emphasizing, in some quarters, unfortunately, Milton has got a bad name. People think that we're filing a lot of complaints, we're making a lot of noise, we're advocating just for ourselves, and that's not the case. And really, two of the best examples of that are the vortex generators that we just mentioned that are now in Congressman Lynch's amendment to the FAA reauthorization. And through Andy, Milton has really taken a lead on that regionally, but if that stays in the FAA reauthorization bill, that helps the whole country, not just our area. The second part of it is the consensus report, that this idea came to the board a year ago from Cindy, to ask the National Academy of Medicine to put together a report on all of the existing scientific knowledge about what the noise and pollution impacts are of air traffic. And the theory is that the knowledge is already out there. We already know that this can create a public health crisis. It's just not, we don't need a new study to show it, the studies already exist. So Congressman Lynch, who's been a real partner to Milton and to the communities he represents, but I've said this before, we don't have a stronger ally in this fight than Congressman Lynch, and he's went ahead and decided to go ahead and sponsor that as an amendment. We're hoping that's going to survive, but that's another thing that would help, not just the Boston area around Logan Airport, but the entire country where these airports are having the same issues. So I think Milton is the epitome of a team player in this battle, and it's through leadership of people like Andy and Cindy that we've gotten to the point at the CAC that we've gotten to, and we are working. I think, David, it's great that you've reached out to a lot of these other communities.
I think
that's going to be a good
that
step.
really shows, and in the conversations that I've had with these elected, whether it's senators, reps, councilors, is that, we're not saying we're the only ones. We're willing to share the burden with others and to have those good conversations on how do we all work together.
Exactly.
All right, with a stronger voice, with more information and more strength to accomplish what we all want. And that's equitability.
And that's been a long time coming, because a couple of years ago, we didn't have very much like trying to get out of the communities, but I think all of the communities now are starting to see that working together will benefit them. Andy and Cindy and I have talked about the fact that we think we probably should put together another letter documenting some of the recent conditions. We've done this a few times over the past few years, where we've given the FAA and Massport notice of, okay, on this date, the planes were over for this many hours, and we've really spelled out some examples. We haven't done that in a little while because we're really seeing how this RNF study is going to play out, but it wouldn't hurt us to document some of the recent experiences that we've had. And I think if we could put that forward to the next agenda, for our next agenda on August 14th, that would be a good thing for our board to sign and send.
I think that'd be a great idea.
Yeah, just giving credit here, a previous CAC rep, Gene Brown, here in town, is the reason that we're able to come up with some of these statistics that we have, because he keeps hourly wind direction, speed, and runway use data, and he's been doing this for over a decade. So he sends it to me about every 7 to 10 days, and it's a little bit of work to get it into analyzable form, but that's, this is a treasure that we have here that a lot of communities don't have.
No question. How does he go to the store? That's, he's dedicated.
Well, he knows that there are these periods of 16 hours, I think, when he can.
God bless him.
So.
Well, thank you all for coming in tonight and giving us this great report. We have a lot of work to do and a lot of support from you, and we want to support the good work that you're doing as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Katie, I'm going to step out for a minute. I'm going to have you chair this next piece.
I think I have to step, thank you.
On the Copeland donation?
Yeah.
I have to step out as well.
You want to take?
Can we,
Let's.
you want to go to another item then?
Yeah, you have to step out. Why don't I do that, and then I'll step out.
You want to do yours first? You want to do
Let's
that?
go,
I'll
yep,
first,
we'll do
or you
the
wanna go first?
acceptance. Yeah, you can go up first. Okay, so item number 10, Richard will recuse himself from this, is an acceptance from the Copeland Family Foundation related to the Dare Camp donation. So the Copeland Foundation has made a donation of $20,000 to the Milton Police Department to support its annual Dare Camp. This marks the 20th year of the foundation's support. This fund supports the annual week-long camp attended by over 120 youths, which is an incredible camp. It gives them incredible experiences and life skills and, kind of what's happening during real time right now.
So I'll move that we accept a donation from the Copeland Family Foundation in the amount of $20,000 to the Town of Milton DARE program.
And I'll second that. Is there any conversation on this?
No, other than thank you very much to the Copeland
we're
Foundation.
very fortunate that the Copeland Foundation has been able to step up with us for many big initiatives, including police and fire labor. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice work.
Okay, so we'll pick up with number 11.
Just following it on. Okay.
So number 11 and number 12 are discussions of the social media policy and the vehicle use
Right.
policy.
Right.
We
So,
have copies in our materials, but I don't think we have a lot of changes to them. They look to me to be, other than to add boards and committees in one section of the social media policy, I don't think they've changed.
I did print out, David had some suggestions from other towns that we had seen that came over this afternoon.
I saw that today.
Was that what you gave us tonight?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I've been, it looks like he's pulled some, I've also been pulling some other towns' social media policies. And there are a lot of issues that we're going to need to think about in terms of boards and committees. I mean, I think the policy still needs a good amount of work.
I do as well. Well, I think it's going to be fluid going forward because it's just, social media is a changing platform every day. It just, my bigger concern is, what are you comfortable with? Are you-
So, yeah, so it was my impression that we might get some more feedback. There was some concern at the last Board of Selectmen meeting with both policies, understandably. There were some public safety issues, some collective bargaining precedents, stuff like that, we would continue to discuss this, take the comments from each of the board members, and then make some edits with the help of town council, disseminate that to the department heads, take their temperature with some of the changes that the three of you have come up with, and bring it back to this group to hopefully get something moving by September, realistically. But just a back and forth between the board and the department heads, something that's palatable for all of them.
I agree, and on both of them, I have some changes, you know, I've been out of state, so I do have some changes that I recommend on the vehicle use policy, which I'll send tomorrow. I just want to make sure it's functional, but especially in the social media one, that works for you.
Right, yeah. And more often than not, I will defer to my subject matter experts, and you know, like you, Richard, in the past, you've been in that role, and you know the ins and outs better than I would in each scope of it, and how those changes would affect their day-to-day operations. And that's, you know, ultimately, we want to be as efficient as possible, but make sure that we do have a policy in place that we can use.
So on social media, I see that, just looking at what was handed out, I see that David pulled Easton. I looked at that one as well. They may have a different one. They may have one for just employees and one for just appointed and elected boards and committees, because the only one I found on a search was the one for boards and committees. Now, ours was a draft for employees.
Right.
And it was based on the Norwood one. I asked Paige to send me whatever she used, and she had used Norwood. And it needs, we can't just add in boards and committees without making a lot of other changes to it. So, you know, Easton is definitely one that we can look at. There are several others as well.
Is there a board or committee that uses social media, or that has a page or a Twitter handle, or is there any at all that use that?
No, there are some departments in town.
I know the department.
Police has one,
Department's
you know,
right.
the Public Works has one.
Actually, I think the Commission on Disability has one. I happened to see their Facebook page
They
the
really
other
do?
day,
Okay.
and I realized that there was
Okay.
one, but I did see it. It's been an issue with the Airplane Noise Committee folks have left the room, but they've also had some questions over time as to whether they could do
Whether
something
they
like that.
could have one.
We've held that off because we wanted to create a policy before we really did anything.
Okay.
You know, there's also the issue of boards and committees commenting on things like the Facebook pages of
Right,
somebody else, like
right,
the Milton Neighbors
right.
or the Milton Neighbors Uncensored, and that can create some issues as well. So there's a lot of different issues that I think we're going to have to address in the policy. And so it's probably need to be circulated a couple more times.
I will consider a couple of back and forths in the
I will
coming
say,
months.
in the short time I've been here, and I never had, I've always had a Twitter handle, I never was on Facebook. I was, you know, it worked out very well for us from a police act, but personally, I'm very careful what I write about. I try not to write anything about what we do here, or I just try to, because, like, you know, it has ramifications. You know, when you write it, once it goes out there, it's out there, you know, and just...
The issue for elected officials is everyone needs to campaign for office. and
Right,
Campaigns
right.
use social media, and social media for candidates is going to be
Right.
about town issues, so.
Absolutely.
Now, that's a different issue than appointed boards, but one that we still need to consider. So, David, we were just talking about both policies 11 and 12 and coming to the conclusion that we still need to do some work on both of them.
Yeah, we do. I made some comments that been circulated
Saw those.
as well. And I think that, other towns have done some work, and I think that we should also look to town council, to try to help us in putting a comprehensive policy together based upon some of the towns that they represent. It's why reinvent the wheel? We do have a really good start here, but I think it's going to be really tight because there are awful lot of things that can be that could come up, based upon whatever role you do play related to the town, whether you're an employee on a board, committee, elected or not. So we've got some work to do. We're more than likely probably going to look at hopefully putting this into policy sometime in September. I don't see the
Perfect.
next meeting being.
Yeah.
So I just said I wanted something Michael's happy with, that's functional for him, that's.
I agree 100%. It's
Yep.
going to be functional and be able to be enforceable. Through the
I think
district.
for both of them, we're going to need the personnel boards, especially the social media policy too, since it applies to employees.
Right.
And that's going to be the personnel board, if this article that the government study committee is putting forward is going to pass, they are going to be looking to be weighing in more on policy. So I think we're going to need to get their input as well.
I completely agree.
If
Another
it's
set of
going to
eyes.
apply to other boards and committees, we're probably going to need to send to all the elected boards as well for input.
Yep, I agree. Good. So we have hit 11 and 12 now?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, so let's have now, number 13 is a discussion on the October 2017 town meeting articles.
Can I speak to the marijuana articles that hopefully everybody has a copy of? Since this is our last meeting before August 7th, these were drafted by Brandon Moss. We had a small group of us had a meeting with him. Alex Whiteside, the chair of the planning board, was there and asked for the inclusion of language in the fourth line from the bottom where it says he wanted to add in any residence or business district, just to spell that out. So other than that, these drafts are based on ones that Brendan Moss, who's John Flynn's colleague, has drafted for other communities, and these have been, the form has been approved by the Attorney General's office. Now, since we had that meeting, the legislature has put forward a bill that would allow the Board of Selectmen of a town to basically accomplish what these would accomplish, which is to prohibit recreational marijuana establishments, things like cultivation facilities, pot shops,
Yep.
any kind of a recreational. It would not affect medical marijuana, and it would not prohibit any individual from growing their own plants, which is allowed under state law now. But we're not sure whether, we think these would still be needed. We need to see where this legislation goes at the state. There's been talk about a potential challenge to it on the idea that a Board of Selectmen in a town that voted no on question 4 last November, which we did. So there may be a legal challenge to that. There's been some talk about that. So the idea would still be for our board to put forward the general bylaw, and for the planning board, and I believe they've already voted to submit the zoning bylaw, which is the exact same language in both. Town council's advice was that we should have a general bylaw and a zoning bylaw. Under the existing question 4 that passed in November, we would need to have a vote of the voters. We now may be able to just have this board substitute the place of the voters and take a vote on that, but the thinking is we should put this forward. So I'm recommending that we put this article forward as a general bylaw and consider sponsoring with the planning board if we'd like to the zoning bylaw. They may have already decided to co-sponsor with us the general bylaw.
So am I correct in that, given the action of the legislature the other day, because this was drafted before that, that we could be even more restrictive than this, in that we can completely ban anything recreational in this town anywhere? Am I correct?
Not people from growing their own plants.
No, I mean
Establishments, which is what this
which is what this will
As
do.
far as anything that any business,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, so this applies to cultivators, testing facilities, product manufacturers, retailers, on-site consumption.
I agree, and my thoughts are based on 2 things. One is David's proposal that we're looking to institute a 1% tax on, to help in the fight against opioid, which is not leveling off, it's not decreasing, it's only increasing. And is whether we like it or not, the passage of this article, of this by home rule petition, whatever kind of
Valid question.
ballot question it was, only throws more into the field of substance abuse. It throws more risk, what issues for young kids, is that, and I said in the previous meeting, it's not the 25-year-old or the 30-year-old I'm worried about, it's the 10 and the 12-year-old who's going to be facing this as they go into high school and going forward. So I'm for being as conservative as we can with this, within the parameters of the vote that was taken, the call. We meet the guideline, we voted no, so we can do, and there may be a legal challenge. I mean,
There may not, but
I hope the federal government overturns the whole thing, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But I really think that, the era that I grew up in where, people could buy and smell marijuana cigarettes is one thing. What recreational marijuana is about to bring into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is a totally different. Edibles, it's a smorgasbord of things, and I think that if it's not at our street corner or in a neighborhood or in a store close to our, if that can help in deterring a kid or protect a kid in this town, then I think we should do it.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, this is some pretty good work done here, and we're fortunate that our legislators that have been representing us have done such a great job in this too as well.
Do you want to take a vote
So-
tonight on this?
Yes, so I'll move that we submit the general bylaw article to prohibit marijuana establishments to the October town meeting.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. How does the board feel about co-sponsoring the zoning bylaw? We don't have to, but it's the same wording.
So, why do we need both? Why do we have to have a zoning bylaw as well as a general bylaw?
Well, town council felt that this is the most conservative approach. Again, this is before the legislature passed
Okay.
their conference committee legislation. But his feeling, and this is the approach he's taken with other towns, is to do it both as a general bylaw and as a zoning bylaw.
Do you want to vote on that too?
If the sense is to go ahead and
Yeah.
co-sponsor, all
Okay.
right. So I'll move that we co-sponsor the zoning bylaw prohibiting marijuana establishments with the planning board.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. I'm going to give a quick update on the 1% alcohol tax. Michael and I met with Carolyn Kinsella, the Director of the Board of Health, and Laurie Stillman from the Milton Substance Prevention Coalition. And we had a great meeting. We were talking about next steps. First of all, an incredible amount of data has been collected by that group, and it's startling, and I think that, in my opinion, we owe it to the future of our kids in Milton and the families that are enduring this substance abuse crisis right now. I think this is an outside-the-box avenue for us to find some consistency. What we've learned is that there are neighboring towns that have full-time substance abuse coordinators. We're not fortunate to have that right now, so we need to do the best we can to find some sustainability and support this organization that is doing the good work that we need for our future. We have a plan. We're going to, I had a nice conversation with Darrell Elliott, who is the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Seems very supportive. Their next meeting isn't until September, so I intend and hope that this board would consider putting forth an article. Anyhow, we're going to meet with the Chamber. But in the meantime, our town administrator, Michael Dennehy, has reached out to every establishment that does sell liquor in some capacity in the town to hold a joint meeting to discuss the benefits of this article and also to give them a better education on why this is necessary and hopefully to gain their support. While that's being done, I am having conversations, or in the process of having conversations with our local elected officials to gain their support, educate and gain their support on this initiative. I think it's imperative that we do some outside-the-box thinking here, and this is a marginal tax, but one that affects almost every family in this town. And I think in a positive way, we can help make change to create better education by just a middle school funding, which I think will eventually allow us to get more sustainability and more attention to be able to raise more funds from outside places and do more grant writing and things that are necessary to have some more consistency. So we're going to be in this process for the next couple weeks, and I'd like to write an article up in collaboration with the Substance Abuse Coalition and the Board of Health.
Still for October?
For October, yeah. If possible. I mean, I think that if we find out that we need a little bit more time and work, then we'll go for May. But I really believe, and I'm not stopping on this. I think that the work I really see the data that's been collected, the responses that we got from our high school students to find out that we're 5 times the average on alcohol abuse and binge drinking, that we are 33% of the respondents have admitted to smoking marijuana. Look, if we ignore this problem, then we're not doing our job as elected officials. So
do you want to propose, would you propose taking this 1% and using that to hire a substance abuse counsel for all to work out of the Board of Health?
So I think that's part of the discussion is to, it's going to solely go to this coalition. And I think, where Boston struggled a little bit with their 2% was that they didn't quite have the means of where it's going to go.
That's the one question I have. What are we going to do with it?
We do, and that's what it's going to go to. It's not going to anything else but that. That is where it's going to go. And I think the goal would be eventually to have a full-time employee in some capacity that could work on this and work with the schools, work with a hopeful teen center down the road, work with youth groups, work with departments that serve youth and families. And I think that when you look at what's happened, with and Ms. Agostino was talking about how they took. There was an article actually in the Globe today about this. When cigarettes became 21,
right. I read it.
There was a decrease. So this is it's a public health issue, is what it is, and I think that we'd be doing our jobs if we did support something like this.
I think the fact that, I don't think anyone more than Governor Baker has flown the flag on this in the Commonwealth, is that, at least like in the public safety, where we're 5 years into first responders carrying Narcan, yet the rate is going up. It's not even leveling off. It's just continuing to rise. The price of heroin is dirt cheap. It's very affordable. I mean, you and I would not have to ride a 5-minute ride from here to get a bag of heroin for very cheap money. And I think, and then the long-term risk to those who, once they become hooked, and it goes back to what I said earlier about the marijuana bylaw, that I think whatever we can do to not just protect those who are affected now, protect the future of this community.
Yeah, I agree.
Whether we need to do it. So I think that I would really like to hear, that was my one question to you, is if we can do this. And I saw that they did take a vote the other day
a unanimous vote.
A unanimous vote to endorse this, which I would have done the same thing myself. I just want to hear where they want to go with it, because I don't want to waste it. If we're going to do it, I think we owe it to the citizens, we owe it to everyone, and we owe it to them to do every little bit, because this would really give them a big bump in trying to get it done. I think we want to get it passed, which I'm all for October.
We're supposed to be, we are a town that gets a lot of good things done, but we don't have that, and there are towns surrounding us that do have it. So I'd like to work real hard to get it on, because I think it's got a lot of momentum right now and a lot of support.
So let me just ask a procedural question, because this is our last meeting before the warrant closes and we don't have a draft of the article. Would you like us to vote to, I guess, to authorize the submission of an article that perhaps that you and town council would work together on?
Sure.
I'd be willing to submit, to vote in favor of submitting the article to the town meeting. I'd still want to hear what the Chamber of Commerce has to say and what the viewpoints may be, knowing that, there's a lot of good reasons to do it. There may be some arguments that we're not thinking about from a competitive point of view and just from a general tax point of view from residents. So without taking a formal position on this, the merits of it, I'd be willing to submit it, or at least to authorize it to be submitted. I mean, since we don't have a draft in front of us, we don't know what it's going to say.
Sure.
But at least we could do that, if
How
that's
many,
agreeable.
how many establishments? 10? Around 10? How many do we have?
I think there were 11
11,
people I
okay.
contacted, yeah.
Okay. If you make that motion, I'll second it, and then maybe we can go ask Murphy Hesty to go back to Brandon Moss, who appears to have some, maybe that can help expedite it, to get it done even quicker, if you're amenable to that.
100%, yeah. That's, so if we want to make a motion on that, we can
Make a
work with
motion, I'll
town council.
second it.
All right, so I guess the motion would be to authorize the chair, working with town council, to prepare an article for the October town meeting that would create a 1% tax on
Alcohol
sales. Is it all alcohol sales that
Yep.
you're contemplating?
And with a recipient to go.
With the funding to be
Funding.
directed to the Milton Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition.
I'll second that.
Okay, and.
And I guess at our meeting on the 14th, we should have the draft at that point, because if,
Yes.
Correct.
depending on the wording of it, we may want to have
I don't
further
think it would have to be a
discussion.
lengthy, Alan, do you? I mean, I don't think it would have to be a
It
long.
won't, it won't have to be, but I think the wording is very important, and we'll be getting a lot of work done simultaneously at that time, so, you know, and it seems to be moving along pretty well.
It's always an option to open and close the warrant
Right,
again and
right.
withdraw something
Absolutely.
if need be,
Right.
but,
Right.
okay.
Okay, so,
Michael, for October? You okay with that for October?
Yep.
okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 The other article, the potential article that I mentioned at our last meeting about
Noise.
elected, no, but I know that's another one, but elected officials' eligibility for health insurance. I've done a little research on that. That does not require a town meeting vote. That's something that we could vote on according to the state statute. So that's not something we would need a town meeting article
Okay.
for. The Historical Commission, I don't know if everyone saw the email, but Steve O'Donnell, chair of the Historical Commission, sent over a draft of an article that the Historical Commission has voted to submit. We forwarded it to town council because it may need some tweaking of language, or at least to be put into a form that town meeting is comfortable with it going to town meeting on. It's to change some of the language in the demolition delay bylaw, so rather than having a specific year, which is what the bylaw currently does, it would be a rolling 75-year target. So as time goes on,
That year goes-
more
that
properties
year
would
rolls,
be
right.
protected.
Got it.
So
Is that
they
the
may,
only change?
Steve did mention that they may want to come in and talk with us about that, about whether we would support that or not at some point.
Want to put them on for the next meeting? Is it too soon for them to do? What do you think? I'm fine with that.
But we
If you
just
want
depends
it.
on Steve's
Yeah,
availability.
if Steve's available, then I think that we should try to put him on for the next meeting.
Yeah, noise, I saw that we've got a handout here
I
about
did,
noise.
from Joe?
Yeah.
The planning board is working on a noise bylaw, and I don't know whether it's as broad as this, it may not be. I haven't really read this since we just got it late this afternoon.
I think I had read this before.
This is the version through February of 16th that former Selectman Tom Hurley and Building Inspector Joe Prondak had been working through. 4 sections: purpose and intent, prohibition of certain activities, enforcement, and severability.
My thought on this would be we should consult with the planning board and give them a copy of this and see whether it's, because they're already planning on submitting a noise
They are.
article.
So I
So
think
we
it's-
wouldn't want
Have you seen
to, I
this?
have not, no, but
I haven't
they may
seen it
still be
either.
working on it.
Okay,
But we wouldn't want to duplicate anything that they're doing or be inconsistent with them, so.
I agree.
okay. Want to send this to them? Want to send this to them?
I will send that to
Great.
them, yep.
And then hopefully we can get a copy of what they're doing circulated to us.
Yeah.
Good point.
This may be one that means reopening and closing the warrant for
Sure.
at a future date.
More than likely. Okay.
I had one town article that we had talked about very briefly in the spring, that the town accountant, Amy Dexter, brought to my attention late in the spring. I think it's a great idea. Basically, you take a look at the surplus in your water and sewer funds, and to offset an increase in the rates, you would take some of that money from the surplus after Woodard and Curran and DPW Director come up with the rates for the fiscal year. You're kind of putting the cart in front of the horse because we've already approved the article in the May town meeting, but this would be a vote in October to then make those surplus funds available, and at which point you could offset that, any increase in the rates.
Does that happen regularly or every
The
year?
last time it happened was in October of 2013.
Okay.
And it happened in the same manner. It was an amendment to the spring article. There is money in both the water and the sewer surplus. Woodard and Curran will sit down with the DPW director and come up with the rate for the year going forward. And this would be funding that we have in a surplus to offset the increase.
I think it's a prudent move by us. I think
It is, but I thought it was only one account. Is it, she's confident?
There's
that
two
she's-
separate accounts, yeah.
Well, I know they're two separate accounts, but I thought we only had enough of a surplus in one of them last spring in order to,
No,
to be able to do that.
she looked at the books, we
She
looked
thinks
at
it's
the books
enough
the
in
other day, yeah, there's water has a little bit more of a surplus than sewer does, but there's enough in both to help offset the rates.
both? Okay.
hope everyone at home is listening to this. Doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't, but okay, well,
Yeah.
that's, I thought Amy was only confident of one of them.
Yeah, we looked harder at the sewer
Well, that's good.
surplus,
Than the water,
and there's
than the
money
water.
there, yeah.
So you want to draft something so that we can do it?
Yeah, we'll draft something, we literally had a conversation today,
Good.
and the numbers will be kind of as soon as they come up with the rates for the year and what that number is to offset both the water and the sewer rate.
So timing-wise, when are we looking at the rates in? Because that's usually early August. So are we looking at the 14th for that?
I believe they're sitting down on the 1st with Darlene McGrath from DPW, who's been integral in helping set the rates over the years, with Woodard and Curran and Chase, and they'll submit it. I will submit it to you guys on the 14th. The bills go out on the 15th, so it's actually perfect timing to roll it over the next day and get that first section of bills out.
Yeah, I mean, Woodward and Curran needs to come in to the meeting on the 14th.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we can get them here.
Good.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Write that down. Where's Fred? He's over there.
Let's move on to item number 14, approval of the second amendment to grant easement at 88 Wharf Street. On July 27, 2004, the town entered into an agreement with the Milton Landing Condominium Trust regarding an easement at 88 Wharf Street. The amendment to extend the agreement was approved in 2016, and the amendment expired on July 8, 2017. Article 31 passed at May annual town meeting. Encompasses this agreement. However, the article is still in the approval process at the Attorney General's office. Once accepted, the article will supersede this agreement. However, a second amendment has been drafted by our town council, John Flynn. So we have a motion in front of us.
I'll move that we assign the Second Amendment to grant of easement as presented.
Second?
Yep. Any discussion? All in favor?
Just, can I
Yeah,
get a
go
little update on it? Exactly what it is? So is this the swap of land between the town and 80, and the trusted 80 Wharf?
Yes,
Okay. That's
So it's a
all I need.
placeholder until the AG
until the AG.
sends his decision, his or her decision back to us.
Okay.
We're going to get a permanent easement at
Okay,
that point,
I
so we're going to have to accept
But
another
we're still in
easement.
a waiting process.
That's all I want to know what it
This is
was.
all related to the project the Master Plan
Okay,
Committee is
very
working
good.
on.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, item number 15, boards and committee appointment, Fair Housing Committee.
You want to do this one, Rich?
I'll do
or you want me
this.
to do it?
I'll do it. So I proposed motion to appoint Bertha Hoskins of 726 Blue Hill Avenue, Thomas Callahan of 16 Orono Street, Joseph A. Duffy Jr. of 6 Westbourne Street, Alexander Whiteside of 79 Hillside Street, and William Cock of 525 Canton Avenue to the Fair Housing Committee to serve through July of 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're on to the town administrator's report. Michael?
Good, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Just a couple of quick things tonight. DPW Director Chase Berkeley had talked about it. We met with the Shade Tree Advisory Committee. I think the work that they're doing in this town it flies under the radar of most. Mr. Taylor and other people in the town are literally walking around to do a street tree inventory for us. I thank them for that. They're working with Alan Bishop from our GIS team at DPW, and they really come up with a pretty comprehensive report, the details of which are not great. They've looked at about 70% of the street trees in the town. According to their estimation, we're losing about 100 trees a year, which is not sustainable. So we have found some funding, we had some money left over in FY17's budget, working with them to identify some areas where we could get the most bang for the buck with the street trees. Operationally, we are hindered by the amount of trees that we can plant. With the funding we have this year, we're in the process of putting a request for proposals out there to help us plant those trees. It's going to be a very streamlined effort, and we should be able to not only keep up with the amount of trees we're losing per year, but hopefully come up with a very sustainable plan that allows us to catch up on what we've lost in years gone by. So we've got well over $100,000 this year, some money from the Copeland Foundation. Thank you to them. Some money that in DPW's FY17 budget as well as their 18 budget. I know the Shade Tree Advisory Committee has reached out to the Conservation Commission to tap into some of the dollars that they have there, as well as a $3,500 state grant that they got. Additionally, we'd like to put a gator bag, which helps sustain the trees at a young age, on each tree that we plant. It's just a much better solution for survival, especially last year when you saw the drought-like conditions that we had in this town. So I just want to commend them for the stuff that they're doing. John Thompson and Chris Trudeau from DPW are putting together that RFP, which should be advertised pretty shortly to get these. Optimal time to plant trees is anywhere from September 15th to December 1st. So we've got a 6-week window to really 10-week window, sorry, to get these trees planted and start catching up on what we're losing. As Ms. Agostino said, we had a department head meeting today about ADA compliance. I'd like to thank Joe Prondak for putting it together. Stacy Hart from the New England ADA Center came in, talked for about 2.5 hours. Very enlightening. Very enlightening. Started off the discussion by giving us a quiz that 1 in every 5 individuals in the United States have a disability. So it's not uncommon. That's 20% of our population. We don't have specific numbers for Milton, but it's, just trying to make sure that all of our town buildings, all the road projects we do, and the way we operate as a town takes into consideration to this ADA compliance. So she was a wealth of information, very engaging dialogue back and forth between the department heads and Ms. Hart. So I want to thank her and Joe Prondak for putting that together today. And then we're going to disseminate her PowerPoint presentation both to this board and any other board and committee that would like to see it. It's a very good, powerful presentation today. So I want to thank them for that. On Friday, Chairman Burns and myself sat down with Howard Stein Hudson, Planning Director Bill Clark, DPW Director Chase Berkeley, and Lauren Mesa, our Assistant Town Planner, to talk about some of the project goals and ideas that have been tossed around with respect to the East Milton reconstruction project. We can dive into details, or we can, basically talk about what the presentation would look like and try to come up with a date that would work for a public meeting. They have talked about putting some strips down in and around East Milton Square, very similar locations to where they were in 2012, to collect the information about volume and traffic in that part of town. And we're trying to compare apples to apples to that. They can get strips in the same locations that they had traffic counters in 2012 in that area by Tuesday, September 15th. They normally collect that data for about 3 weeks. We came to the conclusion that Wednesday, September 13 would be a good public meeting date. Everyone's back from the Labor Day vacation. It's a true picture of what's going on down there. We'll get a 3-week picture of what traffic looks like. As East Milton gets all of Milton gets a little bit quiet during the summer months without buses and vacations and stuff. But pretty healthy dialogue. Very preliminary, but they started to go over their presentation and some of the stuff that they'd like to address at the public meeting.
Yeah, very thorough, and I think that, we've learned a lot over the last several months on what we can and cannot do, and we know the timelines.
Right.
We've been educated on the timelines, and time is important on this project, and I think that we need to meet some of these dedicated timelines to be able to ensure that we can enhance the monies that we have committed to us, and to get not a good product, but a great product that creates safety, efficiency, and access to all residents, and that actually drives people to utilizing the businesses in East Milton Square, but also allowing the residents safety and access in the bicycle community to be able to carry on through that dedicated space. I think it's going to be a win-win at the end of the day with a community process on the park to get enhancements in the park, and I think that, but it's a collaborative effort from all, from the businesses, the residents, our board, and everybody else who's been involved.
So will Howard Stein Hudson be coming in on the 13th, Wednesday?
Yeah,
Yes.
they would like to present,
They're going to do a PowerPoint, they're going to
Yep.
have everything ready to
All
explain to
good.
the
Yep.
public. Good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be very thorough. We met with them for quite a bit of time the other day to discuss a lot of what's going on, and we have heard many residents on every side of the table about this stuff, and I think that we have an obligation to follow through to take that information in, but also to be guided by the people like Howard Stein Hudson too, who understand where we sit. So,
Are they going to be able to speak to different scenarios?
yes,
yes,
Good.
yep.
absolutely.
If that date works, we can solidify that. It's a Wednesday, it's the week after, the second week of school for most, or almost third week of school. Milton starts on August 30th, so it would be, there'd be the third Wednesday of school.
But you want to do this meeting in September? right?
September 13th, yeah, if we could.
Got it.
Say 7 o'clock at the Council on Aging, if we can secure
good.
that.
Yeah,
I'd say we need a pretty big auditorium to make
sure.
sure we meet the
And that
demands.
has the ability there to carry the television access, so it's probably the most suitable area. Anything else on your report?
Just one other thing, I know we had talked about in the spring when the stormwater bills had gone out, that we were going to take a look at, it was our first year doing it. Obviously, Tom Hurley, who's no longer with this board, was the one of the champions of this effort. So what I'd really like to do is find an advisory committee, and I know there's a couple of constituents that have offered their services. I'm not very familiar with how to put a committee together or what the oversight would look like, but I've already had a couple of residents come up to me and.
I know one is, right, I do
Yeah.
know one is.
Yeah,
There's
I've
a couple
gotten a
that
couple
really
as
would
well.
like to do it.
So-
And
I thought there was one earlier here
Yeah,
tonight.
there was, and there's another as well. I think, I would recommend that this board allow Michael to vet this with the interested parties to create some sort of advisory committee and come to us with your proposal.
I'll even put it in the form of the motion that we authorize the town administrator to research and possibly develop a stormwater fee advisory committee. You all right with
Committee
that?
to be appointed by the board, you mean to recommend to the board?
To recommend to us, yeah.
To recommend candidates for, is that what, I just
Yeah,
want to understand your
yeah.
motion.
Yeah, to look at the feasibility of it, and if so, to come back to us and recommend candidates that we would appoint.
When did we set the stormwater fee last year? Does anybody remember? Wasn't it shortly after the water and sewer rates? I'm just wondering how much time we're going to have.
I thought it was October, but I'm
It
not,
was
I wasn't
October?
here. But for some reason, I thought it was water and
So we have
sewer
a
in
little
August.
time.
And
Yeah, you know what, that sticks out
I think it was
in my
October.
mind as well. I believe you're right. I
Okay.
believe you're right. But I would 100% be on board with
Yeah.
that motion.
I'll
so-
second that.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And I think we all have both of the same names. I don't know how big the committee should be, or, I'll sit with them. Obviously, Chase Berkeley, who's the DPW director, will sit and just come up with some of the concerns that we heard in the spring when people received the bills. And, obviously, first
Did you write
year
that
you're
down?
going to learn a lot.
Did you write that down?
Good. Well, that fulfills our discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay, Chairman's report, we've had a little long meeting here, and I don't want to slow us down. I know we have much more stuff that's going to come up. We're going into executive session in a bit, but I just, I'll be brief. I just want to give credit to the Milton 12-year-old national baseball team, which has reached the state finals, which the first time ever this team has reached the state finals. So they're down to the Final Four, and if they get through that, they go to the New Englands. They win the New Englands, we'll all be heading out to Williamsport, a big day. It was funny, I was talking to my brother just recently, and he was on the 1976 Babe Ruth team that went to the World Series in Newark, Ohio, and it was quite a big deal. And so it's great for our town. It seems like We've had a lot of accomplishments lately with many of the different sports teams, but it's great to see the young kids get this opportunity, and we wish them the best. And I know from this board and this administration that we all hope that they do great.
Absolutely.
That's great.
As the father of a
Great.
12-year-old American baseball player, even the American side's rooting for the national side.
Absolutely. So, one town. Well, that's all I have. Katie?
The only thing I have is just to let you both know that the Master Plan Implementation Committee that the work on the wharf in the Milton Village zoning is starting. So you'll probably be getting an email or a phone call, if you haven't already, from MAPC. They want to interview all of us to get our thoughts on the area. They've reached out to the planning board. They're also reaching out to all the stakeholders, like the crew, the Yacht Club, 88 Wharf, the Farmers Market. And their goal is to come to the Master Plan Implementation Committee's August 21st meeting to give an update on the start of their work, but then to have the joint meeting on September 18th with our board, the full Master Plan Committee, as well as the planning board, to really give more of a public update at that point as to where they're at and what their potential findings might be. We're hoping that the waterfront and the dock part will be settled sooner, and that the zoning may take a little bit longer for the Milton Village, and the target for that is the Maytown meeting, to have something ready for the planning board to start having public hearings in December, and then get in the article in for the January deadline for the Maytown meeting.
Great. Excellent.
That's all I had.
Good, we got a lot. I'm done.
Good.
I'm good.
Citizens speak responsible. I think we had good dialogue and we had resolution as to what our next steps are.
Yes.
I'm glad they were able to come in tonight and articulate their ongoing issues, and I'm hopeful that we can find some sort of resolve in some capacity.
Yeah, very specifically, there were many incidents this week where people reached out to Town Hall. Windsor Road, there was a similar incident with the cars
Absolutely right.
traveling at a high speed or rate of speed. Reedsdale Road, we got one today. Same thing, so it's, as you said earlier, it's a town-wide problem. Hats off to those individuals that came in tonight to appropriately identify their neighborhood, so.
Yeah, great. Future agenda items. I can name one. We're working again on Yule and Rink. Obviously, there's been a one-year lease. We're working on culminating our project or
10-year?
agreement to get a 10-year permit with the state, Curry, and the town of Milton, which I think will be great. So look forward to getting that onto a future agenda to discuss more about where we stand and where we're going. Okay.
I hope you're close.
Yeah.
Okay. You've talked about a lot of the other stuff. You've talked about some of
Good.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to make a motion now to enter into executive session for the purpose of considering the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, payment in lieu of taxes committee, believing in that having such discussion in open session would have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the board, and to return to open session to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Okay. We are now in executive session.